casually gazing over
my things,
my
and
things, and I can see at least. Like that's just in this space here. There's 10 candles. Now there's a lot more torches.
What happens if the candles burn down and like completely burn out during a battle? Like there's no more candle left. Do they like pause?
You can't use miracle dice anymore.
Stephanie says that she will stop complaining about the candles on all the sister stuff when they release the model that's the little acolyte with the candle lighter from church who can follow around and can help all the characters keep their candles lit. And I think that's reasonable. I would buy that model.
It's the 41st millennia. You got like ever burning candles.
No, we're still shooting. We're still shooting bullets at each other, Chuck. No,
we're shooting small grenades at each other.
They're actually just little T-candle battery-powered ones that you see.
Yeah. With the flicker on.
Yeah. That's technology that they have access to.
Well, then we still need to figure out who's relighting them because those don't last very long.
Except now it's battery changing.
Yeah.
Does power armor actually have power in it? Because maybe it's powering the...
Oh, that's true. There you go. Build it into that. One of my rhinos has a little fuel tank next to one of the candles, and I painted that candle brighter than all the other candles because I just figure it's like gas-powered candle.
I just realized the hubris of like the Space Marines wearing power armor, these giant biologically engineered people, and then like the sisters are like, no, we'll wear it too. It's fine.
Mm-hmm.
It's designed for us as well.
It's differently designed, but yes.
Right. We don't have anyone here yet. Well, yes, because they have to accentuate their feminine features, because that's how armor works in sci-fi.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just waiting for someone to join to tell us how the audio is. I should tell the Discord that we're live, which will speed that process up.
If you invite them, they will come.
Yeah, if I don't tell them it's happening, they will not. It's Father's Day, so I'm not expecting we'll get a lot of people, but I just wanted to make sure we got recorded. I mean, like, 50 people watch us live, and then like 200 people watch us on YouTube, and then like 3,000 people download the podcast. So we still are very... There's still one particular pattern that's how people find us.
Yeah.
Which I'd expect. Someone's here. Maybe they can tell us how the audio is.
My computer looks like it's crashing, so I'm probably going to have to reboot and come back in.
Oh, well.
Make sure you say the appropriate incantations.
Still working out the kinks with the machine spirit that is Windows 10, so.
Let's just do a quick... sounds fine on my side, and hello there. Oh, 3. Okay, great. So, quick agenda before we get rolling, guys. I'm going to start off by introducing Seth. He's not been on the show before. So we're going to do the... I think he did an orc episode at some point, but he's not been on the main show. So that means the first time anybody's on, Seth, we asked them to talk about how they got into 40K, kind of what 40K has been like for them. Just a little story about yourself. Then I want to hear about your show, your new show. And just so I get it right, are you doing chapter tactics? Is that what you're doing?
Signals.
Signals, you're doing signals, okay.
Yeah, you guys took over signals.
Okay. Yeah. I apologize. I have them all queued up to listen to all the new shows, but I haven't gotten to yours yet. I apologize.
There's too much.
Yeah, there's so much out there now.
Yeah.
You should also mention your channel, your YouTube.
Yes, I can mention.
Well, I started off by listening to Graham After Dark because I figured it was really likely that I would never have to listen to that show again after trying it one time. No, I'm kidding.
Once John got past his scripted intro, they were good.
Yes, I agree with that. So, okay, you're doing signals.
I gave him that feedback politely.
Okay. I guess a number of us did, because when I got to him, he was like, oh man, now I have a complex. I'm like, oh dear. Okay. Alright, so we're going to talk about that. Then we're going to talk about the power, the awesomeness of team tournaments, and we're going to talk through our team tournament that we went to. And then we're going to do part 2 of Better Human, Better 40K, which is when I'll talk about self-awareness and the Jahari window will be the second topic for that. And that'll be our show.
All right.
Okay. I'm going to close my door, and then we'll get rolling. No, stay there. We're staying. We got a show to do, Gusta.
Mitch hasn't crashed yet.
Well, I'm sort of... I mean, no, my computer's crashing, but I'm kind of like, well, As long as Skype's working and everything else is broken,
Did
I guess
everyone-
that's fine.
Did everyone see how Gus reacted to me getting up? I love that stupid dog.
He's like, are we leaving now?
Where are we going? What's happening? Is it going to be great? I think it's going to be great. Let's go.
Adventure time. Come on, bring your friends.
Well, normally he sleeps, like, he just continues sleeping forever.
He's got to reposition for his good camera shot.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, right there would be perfect, Gusta. Lay down. Oh, no, not over there. Oh, he's
He
back.
says, you can see my face over your shoulder, Dad. It is fine.
Okay. Oh, did I just move backwards? I just moved backwards. I made it worse. Okay, cool. Everybody wants to see Gusta, so this is an important part of the show prep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. We're ready?
Yep, and I'm just gluing bits for the Boise Cup while we're doing this. So.
Okay. Oh, I have my notes for the tournament, and they're in the other room. One more thing.
Oh yeah, let me grab my notes. That would be a good idea.
I've got my notes.
Ah, right here.
Stay. I'll be right back. Stay.
I got mine. Oh.
Chuck, we had a very interesting game last night between Peter and I with the Custom Stompa and AdMech. 2 turns, the Custom Stompa killed everything I looked at, and then 10 Chicken Walkers came on, shot it, killed it, it exploded, and then killed 300 points of characters.
I like an explosion.
So you're saying it was a little swingy?
It was. I still
Well, he
managed to.
brought a Stompa, so yeah.
Yeah.
It's gonna swing somewhere.
Yep.
It is mildly amusing that we have Seth on, and yet we have no orc games to talk about. No one played against orcs, no one played with orcs, there was no orcs.
There were orcs.
I'll just
in the
comment on
room.
like how orcs would have done in that matchup.
Orcs lose this one too, Captain. Alright,
How did Lucas do? Did he?
You played Minotaurs.
he wasn't there. The team tournament? Lucas wasn't
Oh,
there.
yeah, he
you're
wasn't
talking
there.
team tournament.
Yeah, there were no
Okay,
orcs at all.
There's a team tournament in a week here, and I'm the only orc going.
Nice. Well,
So I already was just like hashtag best orcs.
For like the next
Yep.
7 minutes, that'll be true, and then there's going to be a lot.
Yeah.
Yep.
I know what happens when an Orc Codex comes out. I know how many Orc players emerge from their slumber to play Orcs. Okay.
It's like a Space Wolf Codex release, except for when it goes up.
Ah.
The Orcs does, at least.
Azrael says Orcs are only fit to be cut down without mercy, which I think is rude.
well, it's harder to cut them down.
Not everybody can be secretly chaos. All right.
Ooh,
So, here we go.
or not so secretly.
Right? Everybody seems to know. I don't know. I don't know. Everybody makes jokes about it so often. It seems like it's the worst kept secret in 40K.
It's hiding in plain sight.
Yeah. Welcome to Best in Faction.
A podcast about playing Warhammer 40k competitively.
I'm Colin,
I'm Mitch.
I'm Chuck.
and we also have Seth here today. Welcome, Seth.
Welcome. Thank you. Glad to be here.
So Seth is a longtime friend of the podcast. In fact, one of the first tournaments that I went to after the podcast had moderate success was Nova, and I said to the patron group, who wants to meet up? And Seth was the first person to find me when I walked into Nova, and I didn't know anybody, so that was pretty cool. I hung out with Seth and his friend at Nova. That was Nova 2018 now, I think, Seth. I think that's like
Yeah.
a bunch of years ago
100%
now.
Sure.
So we wanted to have Seth on. We've had Seth on before to talk about orcs, I think, but we wanted to have Seth on in earnest because he's got some big news to share with you guys. But before we do that news, it's Seth's first time on the big show, so that means he's got to talk about how he got into 40K and how, what 40K is to him and what he kind of focuses on, and certainly talk about your YouTube channel and everything. And so go ahead.
Yeah. So, like many players, I got into 40K, as a kid. I think 3rd edition was when I started playing. Back when you didn't have money and drop pods were solo cups. If anyone can remember that era in their lives. So I played through like high school, and then I got to college and took a break in college. And then when I got out of school, I moved to Maryland, and that was still one of the places that had like multi-person GW stores. And so I got back into it there, and then I'd played Space Marines and Tau back in like 3rd and 4th edition, but when I was like starting anew, I decided I'm going to start a new army, and I started Orcs, and it's been a passion ever since. So I mostly played narratively for the last few years after that, and then about 2-3 years ago I started getting into competitive play, and never looked back. So that's kind of been my journey. As you guessed, I mostly play Orcs. I do occasionally dabble in my Space Marines and Tau still, but it's mostly Orcs. I have a YouTube channel called Seth the Mad Dog, so I do Orc coverage there. I try to focus on competitive content, and most recently I started working as one of the hosts for Signals from the Frontline in the new FLGN kind of rebrand under El Jefe, as I've come to call Val Heffelfinger. So that's kind of my story. What 40K means to me. I can point to at least like 3 periods in my life now where I've moved to a new area, didn't really know anyone, said, well, let me just go down to the game store, and have made lifelong friends doing that process.
Yep.
So, in fact, like the majority of like my wife and my social circles now are people I've met through Warhammer. So it's a good community. It's good to hang out. Everyone's super supportive. You can always, if you got a question, there's always someone that's already had that question and has been thinking about a way and happy to talk with you about how you can try to solve that problem, whether it's modeling, painting, game, whatever. So yeah, it's always a good time.
How does your wife feel about most of your friends being from 40K? Because I have a similar experience.
She, she's accepted it. When it's actually really funny when we go to Atlanta, because I live about 2 hours away from Atlanta, so we go to Atlanta for events. When we go, one of our friends has an uncle that loves to host us, and we all stay at his house. But he has a strict rule, and my wife loves this rule, which is when we all come home from the event and we're all going to go out to dinner together, we have 1 hour to talk about 40K, and that's it. And then after that hour is up, there is no more 40K talk for the rest of the evening. So she enjoys those trips because she doesn't enjoy when all the talks about 40K. So, but like one of my co-hosts, Shelby, is like my wife's best friend. So Shelby and I have learned a while ago that we're not gonna 40K talk around the spouses.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
and then
happier.
What you do for a living is also neat. So I thought maybe you could share that as well.
Yeah. So I'm a veterinarian for Auburn University, and specifically I work in exotics. So I work with exotic pets. I work with the Raptor Center, and I of course teach students while doing all of this. So that's my daytime job. In fact, I'm on call for it. My wife snuck in off camera to hand me my work phone to make sure I had that during this couple of hours.
So I told my kids you were going to be on the show, not that they listen to the show because this would be really boring for them. But I told my kids you were going to be on the show, and we were talking about birds of prey, and they had a question for you.
All right.
So you work with birds of prey and of varying sizes. Mm-hmm. And our understanding from reading the internet is that the amount of force that those birds can accomplish during the dive is crazy. And mm-hmm. they're curious that if those birds wanted to kill you, could they just kill you? Could they just dive you and into the head and you'd be done? Is it that level of power?
So the best for like ease of comparison, a peregrine falcon, which is about a 700-800 gram bird depending on time of year and body size, in its full stoop, which is 220 miles per hour, hits with the equivalent newtons of a 308 rifle. So the answer is theoretically yes, but it would have to hit like a very sensitive spot very directly. And most of these birds aren't going to mess with you. In fact, the rule of thumb is like they're not going to try to take on a prey item that's more than half their body weight. And for reference, a bald eagle is like 10 pounds. So, most of us are nowhere near their radar of things. Now they will like defend a nest, if they're nesting and they want to protect their babies, but you have to be kind of pretty persistent for them to actually come after you, because most of the time they'll just kind of squawk at you and yell. Yeah,
the kids were talking about when every kid at some point, right, goes to a zoo or there's an assembly at school and they get to see a bald eagle or a falcon, mm-hmm. or they get to see it for the first time, and the kids were sharing with me how shocked they were at how big some of those birds are. And it was funny because my childhood memory is the same, Seth. Like going to school and oh, there's a woman here with a bird. That bird's like 2/3 the size of that woman. Like that. So anyways, we thought they wanted me to ask you that, and I think it's an interesting point. Why would the bird try to off you? What have you done to this bird?
I mean, there's lots of birds that hate me, but I don't do anything nice to them because I'm the doctor. So when I show up, bad things are happening from their perspective.
I like that you're the orc doctor, which somehow probably doesn't make them feel more secure.
No, probably doesn't.
Well, I do believe in you.
Yeah.
All right, so the rest of the show is just going to be bird questions. No, it's not.
Centaur bird questions?
Yes, that's right.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
So if a centaur had wings, how big would the wings have to be? I think that's actually a terrible hybrid, right?
Isn't that a pegatar?
that's a terrible hybrid because a horse is a heavy thing. Normally,
you made it more front heavy.
Yeah, it's not good. Okay.
Aerodynamics are a bit off.
All right, so Seth, you were doing a podcast called The Dangly Boys, which has come to an end. You're doing your YouTube channel about orcs, and Val Heffelfinger decides to rebrand all of the Frontline Network and the new shows are. We had Danny on last week to talk about the new Grim After Dark, which, if you guys haven't listened to the first episode, is very entertaining. And Reese had done Signals from the Frontline 700 times or some crazy number.
So the episode count per like the RSS feed is 738. He claims to have done over 1,000 episodes though, so maybe there were some old ones that weren't on the feed.
Okay.
Yeah, but he has claimed to have done it, every week for 10 years. So he was quite ready to pass the reins off. He'd never really intended for that to be weekly commitment for 10 years. And so,
I don't like doing the math on that.
Yeah. Well, and then the other thing, Reese and Frankie, and I don't know how much you guys paid attention to Frontline Gaming way back when, but I do actually remember watching a lot of their YouTube stuff when they were just like two dudes in a tiny store in California.
Yep. Where the bus would come by and they'd have to just stop.
Yep, all that jazz. And they were a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And back then they were like a 2 or 3 man company. Now they've got like 15 employees and they're trying to manage a bunch of stuff and, just like keeping up on the community and engaging with the community like weekly in a show format is a lot. And a little behind the scenes, like we actually take show notes like semi-seriously. Like as soon as one show ends, we're starting the notes for the next show, and we're trying to contact people for information that we need. So it was time for him to pass that off. So so Val reached out to Kicker, and then Kicker reached out to Shelby and I to see if the three of us wanted to kind of come on and do this together. I met Kicker a couple years back at an event. If anyone's ever met Kicker, he is as energetic, if not more energetic.
He is so memorable. He is so memorable.
We have literally, like, if you go back to like deep in the notes of like our theory about the show, my job is to slow Kicker down. That is my job on the show, because Kicker, like, he's talked so fast the internet gave up once. In one of our pre-shows, we were like, you need to go a lot slower. It can't handle you, man. So he's a lot of fun, though. He is the FLG event organizer, so he's kind of our direct source for all FLG information. Shelby is she works at a local game store. She's been involved in the hobby for years. She's not as competitive a player, although she goes to events, but she wins best sports. She's very social, so she's kind of there for more of our community engagement, and she's really good at doing interviews, so we're actually going to do some of those coming up. And then I'm mostly focusing on Val's vision for the network is, and he hates when I say this, but I'm going to say it anyway, is ESPN. Mm-hmm. He basically wants us to have coverage Monday through Thursday of the events, and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we're actually streaming the events is the goal. So, Chapter Tactics is kind of your catch-all show for just broad topics that want to be discussed. That's got taken over by Matt and Demecki from the Dice Check crew. They've got already a large fan base, so it kind of worked well for them. We've got Stat Center came back. Stat Center's on Mondays. It's covering the last weekend's event. Everyone knows and loves it. Colin already mentioned Grim After Dark. There's a Thursday show, which is Paul Murphy, some guy you might not have heard of, Adam Camilleri. Have you guys heard of him?
Haven't heard of him.
And PJ Pajama Pants. And they're talking about the upcoming events. So that left me a very narrow window of material that I'm supposed to cover, which is cover how the IT season is going for individual players, but don't talk about last weekend's events or next weekend's events.
Okay.
So
I thought a big part of Signals for the Frontline is also telling us about the stuff that's coming out. That too.
Yeah, that's mostly Kicker's job right now. Kicker's telling us here's the products that are coming out, here's the event stuff that's coming out, and I'm mostly focused on what's happening in the community.
Well, I have to tell you that, I mean, we're so excited for you. Like, you deserve this so much. You are the exact right personality. I would be terrible at that show because I'd be like, oh, good, more Space Marine rules. And people would be like, this isn't really what we were looking for. But I do want to say that having Kicker on the show is fantastic because Chuck and I met him at the last LVO that we were at. And he is like half of a Chuck or a Colin in unit size.
Oh, yeah.
And he is a ball of electricity. Like the image of the Dragon Ball Z characters charging is how I feel like he looks when you're talking to him. Like, I can only stand here for so much longer, and then I have to leave. But in the meantime, you're going to just be part of this energy that I'm building. Right, Chuck? Like, we were both just amazed by him.
Yeah, it was great.
My favorite thing about Kicker is he describes his one vice as breakfast cereal.
Oh, yes. That's serious passion.
Yeah.
Yeah. My favorite thing that he did pass at ACO is he's complaining to me because this is like the first time he's really done these work trips, and he's like, man, we were out till like 1 or 2 last night, and I get up at like 7 in the morning, and he's got pictures on Facebook of him like running at like 5 a.m. And I'm just like, you're complaining to me about being tired, yet I have pictures of you running at 5 a.m. 4 hours after you went to bed.
Yes.
Like, which one is it, buddy?
With the most nonsensical explanation possible. You overcome a late night by starting early. No, that's exactly not how that works. Yeah. Sorry, Kicker.
Well, certainly it is, though. I mean, of people generating energy, he's well above us. I mean, we should be.
Yeah, but let's not compare ourselves to small nuclear reactors.
Yes.
Love you, Kicker.
We do. We adore you, Kicker.
Absolutely.
Okay. Also, anyone who names their kid Kicker is kind of cool. Also, like, there are a lot of bad names in this world. Naming your kid Kicker is kind of awesome.
You know what he named his son? His son is named Oak.
I did know that, actually.
So I told him, like, your kid has to be a professor now. Like, that's the end of the line for him.
I think Puncher would have been a better name for his kid. Slapper?
Yeah.
Slapper.
Or maybe you stay on the kicking theme and it's like Punter.
Ooh. Punter is a good name for a kid of Kicker. That is a good name.
This is Kicker and this is little Kicker, Punter.
Yes. Okay. Great. All right. I guess we should talk about 40K now.
Yes.
Probably.
Let's see. General update. Charity Hammer is officially happening. For those that have missed that memo, it is August 5th through 8th. Seth will be here, which is exciting. Have you been out to Washington State before, Seth?
I think I did a couple conferences in the past for work.
Not really the same thing. Yeah.
No.
I know for my conferences, that means you were at a hotel for a few days and then you went back to an airport.
I feel like I explored. It was in Seattle, and I feel like I spent an afternoon walking around once just because I was like, I've been locked in rooms for 3 days. Yeah, I'm going outside.
Right. So Charity Hammer's happening. We've added a bunch of great people over the last few weeks that are now coming. The one and only Thomas Bird is now joining us, which is great because Thomas is a fantastic player who plays in a meta that we don't have access to very much. Like, the people that play Thomas, we don't run into. Also, Thomas will be by far the tallest person at Charity Hammer, which is a treat for Pickles and Chuck and I. Actually, Chuck doesn't like it at all, but that's okay.
I'm threatened by ones that are larger than me to take them down.
Yeah.
There's the inner orc coming out.
Yes. Oh, he's a bigger boss. So we added him, and sounds like Jack Harpster is going to be able to come, which is exciting because he's doing some stuff with Marines that no one else is doing. He's doing some Death Watch and some Templars and stuff. We added Anthony, whose last name I don't know how to say. Is it Vanilla? Vanea?
He's Vanilla until he tells us otherwise.
Vanilla? Okay. Anthony's a younger kid who's been... Oh, I shouldn't call people kids. He's a younger gentleman who has been doing really well this season with Drukhari. I know. But he's been doing better than other people with Drukhari. He had a really high finish at Dallas. He had a really high top 8 finish at ACO. So he's going to be joining us. Yeah, just a bunch of people. Brad Chester's coming now. It's so many people I can't remember who all we're missing. But the good news is, in just a few episodes, I just realized this Twitch is called Sisters Day, 2 games, some waiting. That's not actually what's happening. I apologize to those that came to Twitch to watch Sisters. That was yesterday. Anyways,
check it out on our YouTube channel.
Yes, that's right. This is the level of professionalism that you've come to expect from BIFPOD. The good news is that in a couple episodes, we're going to have the Falcon on, and he's going to we're not only going to give you the full roster of who's coming, but we're also going to tell you the seeding of those people for the big single elimination GT that will be happening. So, very excited about that. Lots of Charity Hammer news coming up. August 5th through 8th. If you are someone who likes watching competitive 40K streamed, you should put in vacation days. A vacation day for Friday the 6th. That's going to be the day, if you work Monday through Friday, that's going to be the day you want off. Chuck and I have been streaming. I also streamed a game with Noah last week. I'm exploring different Drukhari lists. Chuck's trying to learn Sisters in a hurry because there's going to be orcs at some point. And orcs are, in the hierarchy of Chuck, orcs are superior to all. And then Mitch has also been learning AdMech and getting it ready for a tournament. So I'm hoping that we can entice Mitch to come stream with me here in the next couple weeks before his major.
Well, the major's next weekend, so so we might get a game in, but
we can
honestly that time needs to be spent painting.
Well, fair enough.
You're currently hobbying on the army you're going to be playing with, right?
Yep.
Yes.
I suspect there won't be a game.
Fair enough.
I heard the words gluing earlier, so he's got a few steps to go.
Yeah, gluing is not the last step.
But it's the one I'm on.
But it's the one I'm on. That's great. Good answer, Mitch. Okay, so on with the show. I don't think we have any other significant news to share with you guys. I do want to say that we are recording on Father's Day. And I, for one, am a stepdad, and Chuck is a father, and Mitch is a father to many, many Imperium followers who want to know what list they should be taking. And Seth has pets, so
yes.
All joking aside, Father's Day doesn't get the same attention Mother's Day does in our country. And the thing I want to say Happy Father's Day to all the dads out there, because there's a gazillion of us in 40K. It is a very dad-rich hobby. There's a lot of dads that play 40K. But I also want to say...
describe it like that from now on.
It's a dad-rich hobby. Well, there's
a dad-rich hobby about using miniatures to fight battles.
It turns out when your hobby is...
We have a high surplus of puns and cargo shorts. That's how I would summarize that.
And
so you're saying the dad bod is the standard for 40K?
It is.
It's the minimum, really.
I think that when your hobby is... mostly 25 to 50-year-old men with some discretionary income and free time, you're probably going to find some dads in there. So, anyways, I did want to say, as someone who made the decision to become the father overnight of 3 boys, that if you're a stepfather, please feel like this is your day as well. Being a stepdad is a different job, but it's a very similar job, and I know that, at least for me, I'm finally not yelling at people all the time anymore. So, I mean, it was a transitional period for sure. I just wanted to say that. It's a big day for a lot of people that really need to feel appreciated. So, we appreciate you because, dads are important. Okay. Anybody else want to say anything about dads? No. All right. Fair enough. Let's talk about 40K then.
I mean, I could point out that Father's Day is also easily termed a specific swear word, like it's motherfucker day.
Well, that is funny.
That I learned that from my grandpa, so it's technically kind of a Father's Day tradition.
Oh, okay. Little Father's Day wisdom passed on by the elder Pelhams. Okay. So, we are going to talk about a tournament, which is your guys' favorite thing we talk about. So, and then after that, we're going to have segment 2, and we are going to have it today. We do have time for it. And we're going to have segment 2 of Better Human, Better 40K. Seth is going to do color commentary for us. He's going to ask us questions about our games and any thoughts that come to him as we go, because he didn't get to play in this tournament. We went to a 3-person team tournament at our good friend Jason Bird's store, Lion Guard Gaming. He will be sponsoring Charity Hammer with his terrain that he's creating. We're going to get some tables of his, and we're going to have a link for you guys to buy some fairly incredible terrain. Terrain is a thing that 40K desperately needs good terrain. Good terrain is very important, and Jason's very good at it, so we're going to promote him over... not over, actually. We're going to promote him and everybody else who makes terrain, honestly. Okay, so 3-person team tournament. They did do disparate scoring, which is the best way to run a team tournament by a wide margin. And so the way that it worked is at the end of your game, the three of us played, Chuck, Mitch, and I. The three of us played 3 other people, and at the end of the game, you looked at your victory point differential, and you looked at your game points. And if you had a 0 to 5 point differential, you got a 10, and they got a 10. It was 6 to 10 is 11 to 9, and that scales all the way up to if you beat someone by 51, it's a 20 and a 0. The reason this is significant is it's possible in disparate scoring to tie. We win 2 games, your team wins 1 game, all the games were close, it's actually a tie, it's not actually a win. So the disparate scoring ends up being a big deal. In 5-person teams, the disparate scoring is hugely strategic and one of the most interesting things about it. In the 3-person team environment, we basically just figured out that as long as 2 of us won, we were probably fine. People didn't have close enough games that it was that big of a deal. And I don't think anybody gave up an 0-20 either, which made a big deal too. So, did you? Okay. So, almost nobody gave up an 0-20.
I only got them, so.
Yeah, so the way that it worked is we each brought a list, which we'll talk about in just a second. We went up to the table with their captain, and each team put out a list. And then there's 3 lists altogether. So each team put out a list, and then the 2 lists that you didn't put out went against the list the other team put out, and that team gets to pick which of those lists they want to play. So we both do that. That settles 2 of the games, and then the final game is whoever's left. It's pretty fun. We'll talk about our pairing strategy as we go. But first, I'd like to talk through our lists, and Chuck, why don't you start with your list? And by the way, you should explain what weird phase of the meta this Sisters list is.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I'm gonna go over the list. I'm not going to go over it in super detail, because for one, it's using the old codex, but it was using the new point values. So the first thing I will say is it was an old version. Sorry, what?
I got confused by that.
So
old codex, new points.
Yeah, we're using the chapter approved point release.
Okay, gotcha.
And so Sisters actually went down in points. So my list is 193 points more than it would have been for the codex that it should have been. So I brought a Bloody Rose Battalion. I brought a Canonist, a Palatine, and Lord Inquisitor Kyra Drakus. 3 squads of 5 Battle Sisters. One of those squads had 2 Flamers in it. Those were great in the Drukhari match that we'll talk about later. 3 squads of 8 Repentia, a Preacher, and a Magifier. 2 squads of Seraphim with Hand Flamers. 9 Zephyrim. 3 squads of Retributors with Multi-Multas, and 5 Rhinos with Hunter Killer Missiles. It drives forward, and it launches itself into my opponent, trying to kill them and take objectives away from them so that they score low as well. Overall, that's not a great battle strategy for a team event like this. As we see with my games, I tend to win the game, but only by a little bit, which means I don't do a bunch for bringing a differential, because I'm taking points away from my opponent to win instead of scoring points myself. You need to kind of be doing both in a team tournament if you want to get those high output scores. It treated me well, but it's old Sisters, so I don't really want to go into it much. If you want to.
Fair enough, Mitch.
Sure. I ran a full Mars battalion. So there's a few things that went into the construction of this list I want to cover. I've only played a limited number of 9th edition games, and I hadn't played for really years before. So AdMech has a lot of complexity to it. I've been staring at this book and absorbing it for quite a while. At this, just trying to get all the rules in my head, and I came to the conclusion that if I did that, I would just be creating a too complex list for me to pilot where my skill set was at the moment. I needed to knock more rust off and get more games under my belt. So I went with Mars because they are simpler than a lot of the other Forge Worlds for how you want to use them. The only really complex thing is choosing the canicles for all of your models. But other than that, it was a very simple to operate list. It didn't have a bunch of different Forge Worlds or anything that made it, stressful or complex. So I've got a Skitarii Marshal with the fallback Warlord trait and the Relic for reroll hits and wound rolls of 1. Obviously, he's amazing. I've got the 2 Manipulus each with a one of the purchasable upgrades. One was the fallback and shoot at -1, and then the other one was the ignore AP 1 and 2. And then I had the pseudo cogitator on one of them as a relic to give him a little combat punch, but it never came up. From there, I've got 4 squads of 20-man Skitarii, 2 Vanguard, 2 Rangers, all of them with the Omni specs and the data tether. And then I've got 2 squads of 10-man Infiltrators. I've got 2 squads of the Laser Chickens, 2-mans. So a total of 4 of those guys. 2 of the Mars Bombers and a Disintegrator tank for a little bit of indirect fire. And one of the Mars Bombers has the -1 damage upgrade on it. I think that's everything.
Okay.
And Mitch, one of the things you told me about this list was you intentionally kept it on the, I won't want to say the simpler side, but you kept the complexity down.
Yeah.
Because you knew you were getting started and you wanted to focus on basics.
Yep.
And making sure your angles were strong stuff. And I think that's a really good, it's a thing I think I should do more of, but I think it's a really good thing for people to consider when you're starting a new army. Don't bring the most high octane thing you can. Give yourself a little space to learn by bringing in something that's maybe just more core. Maybe it's all power, but not like finesse everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So you can kind of fiddle and grow. I think that was a really good choice. And
there's a lot of tools that AdMech have, and like the instinct is to cram everything in there, and that I think that's valid, and I might move towards that more. I haven't played with Lucius yet. There's lots of things to explore. I'm really excited about Ryza, Lucius, and Styges all as much as Mars. I think they all have a place. So it was cool because by the 5th game for me, not the army itself, but the secondaries and how it deployed and kind of everything, how all the tools work clicked by the 5th game for me. So I felt like, okay, I know what I want to do with each of these units, and I have a much better grasp, and that's going to inform the next set of iteration of lists for this major I'm playing.
Cool. I brought Drukhari. It was post-nerf Drukhari by points and rules, which was really the only reason I took them. Basically, we talked about me taking Ultramarines, and on the Monday that lists were due, I YOLO'd into a Drukhari list. No time to practice it, no time to figure out if it's exactly what I wanted to take, just made one. And it was super fun. So I took the Triple Patrol, I took a Cabal of the Blackheart Patrol with the Splinter Genius Archon with Hatred Eternal and the Husk Blade. Excuse me, the Djinn Blade. I took a Court of the Archon with 4 Sliths and 4 Urgles. I had Drazar. I took 10 Kabalite Trueborn with 2 Blasters and a Dark Lance, which is the official unit of the Trueborn. 2 units of 5 Incubi, a unit of 5 Scourges with 4 Shredders, and 5 Dark Lance Raiders. Then I had an Obsidian Rose Patrol, which had an Archon, another Splinter Genius Archon, this one with Ancient Evil, so he's the Fight Last Archon. And then he has his own Trueborn unit with him. That's how you get 2 Trueborn, is you have 2 different Cabal things. Obsidian Rose gives you longer range and a reroll of a wound. I adored having 2 Trueborn, where one rerolls a wound and one rerolls a hit, and one has longer range. It was great for those that want to try it. Then the only real downside of it is you end up with 2 Master Archons, which is a lot of points. So I made one rerolling everything, 7 attacks with the Djinn Blade, and I had one that just had Fight Last, and they went on buddy cop adventures together, basically. Then I had a Cult of Strife Patrol, which was a Succubus. I did Competitive Edge and the Triptych Whip, the Whip. That means that she has 10 attacks on 2s, wounding everything on 2s, AP 3, 2 damage. But anything that doesn't do damage gets to roll again. The efficiency of that was everything I could hope for. I don't think she fought anything the whole tournament that didn't die in combat to her. And then a unit of Blood Brides. The Blood Brides are actually an AdMech response. If someone's playing Lucius, having the Blood Brides in your list is a really big deal. They're extra AP to win on 6s with reroll to wound. It means that you obliterate even the most durable unit there. And I gave them the Strength Drug and an Agonizer on the leader. Then I had another unit of Witches that I rolled drugs on. And then a 5-woman witch unit that I rolled drugs on.
Quick question on that anti-AdMech tech. What is their strength on those Blood Brides of the attacks?
4.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, but I'm presuming that The Blood Brides are in case they have a super buff transhuman unit. So you're winning on 4s anyways, but
Yeah.
basically the deal is you've got 41 attacks. You're going to hit on 2s because they're Blood Brides, and then you're either going to just accept your wounds and try to do well, or you can fish for 6s if you want, because the 6s at AP4 against Lucius means that you put them to you put them to their invul. So, anyways, and then I had 9 Reavers that I took 3 Heat Lances on. That was kind of something that my friends had been telling me is great that I hadn't gotten a chance to play with yet. So this was very much what does Colin already have painted and can borrow from his friend Peter. So this was very much like there's no time to hobby Drukhari, but it worked well. So our first matchup was against a group of 3 guys from the Tri-Cities, which is across the state from us, called Girthquake, which I appreciated. And they brought a Space Wolves list. They brought a Custodes list, and they brought a Morty and big durable chaos things like Blight Haulers and things list. I don't have our pairings notes from this one. I have for all the other ones. I have our pairings notes, but I don't have this one. I think the deal was that I actually can't remember who we led with. I have all the notes on the other rounds, but I don't remember who we led with for a defender for this one. I think it was me, but I don't remember.
My memory is that it was you.
Yeah. We weren't sure that we wanted my first game with this Drukhari list to be into Custodes, I think is what the deal was.
Yeah.
So the idea was we put me out, and then I'm going to get a choice between 2 lists, and then I'm going to pick the one that isn't Custodes, and then one of them will get Custodes, and one of them will get the other list, Death Guard or whatever else.
Well,
in the end,
it was Space Wolves, Death Guard, and Custodes.
Right, but we didn't know that you'd get, because we didn't know that because we didn't know how it was going to work out. So in the end, go ahead, Seth.
Can I interject here?
Yeah, please.
So I'm not very good at the pairing process, and I've played in a team event before where there are 5 teams or 5 person per team, and I've been talking through a lot of it with Peter lately. But I'm interested in basically why did you decide like who goes up as the defender?
Yeah, so
you want that person to have choice. Is that what we're looking at here?
Yeah, so in 5s it's much more complicated, but in 3s. Basically, in 3s, one of the 3 of us gets a choice, and that's it. And that choice ricochets, cascades into everything else. So, I think for this one, I'd like to leave this topic for the next round because at the later rounds, I have all my notes for the pairings, and it'll be easier to explain what we were predicting. But you're right, Seth. We should talk about that in more detail because it's something people don't really have a lot of experience with.
Well, what I noticed when it came, basically, since it was a 3-person, what it came down to is figuring out the one matchup you absolutely didn't want to happen, and the key, and so whichever that matchup was, you can put that person out as a defender because they'll always have an alternate to the matchup.
That's right.
How I thought about it.
Yep, that's the most basic thing, and then the more advanced part of that is trying to figure out what that does to your other 2 games, right? So, the goal was to get us all into a good matchup. What ended up happening here is I got Space Wolves, and Mitch got the poor Mortarian list, which wanted nothing to do with AdMech. And then Chuck had the Custodes, which we learned throughout the weekend is not actually a fun matchup for sisters, but it went okay in this case.
Well, it was mostly mech Custodes. It's much easier for me.
Okay. So we have 15 games altogether to talk about. 5 rounds, 3, and each of us playing. So we're going to do a minute on most of the games each, and then we each are going to pick 2 games to go into incredible detail on. Mine are going to be rounds 3 and 4. I don't know what games that my friends have chosen. So I'll just kick it off. My opponent had a Space Wolf list with triple Redemptor. No ability to give the Redemptors an invul. I believe that's a huge mistake in a Space Marine list. Just, Oh, we should say, these guys are longtime competitive 40k players who left in 8th and are just coming back. So they were like really knowledgeable, but 9th edition tournaments were new to them. So he had 2 units of Big Thunderwolf cavalry. He had a unit of Vanguard vets. He had a bunch of troops. He had 3 Redemptors, with plasma. No, he had 3 Redemptors with the Onslaught gun, which is not nearly as good right now as the Plasma is. This game was not super good for him. Frankly, the Armor of Rust is too easy for me to avoid, and anything I have kills anything of his in combat, pretty much. The Witches kill anything he's got. The same thing with the Incubi and Drazar. What happened is I went first. My bikes went running up, shot and killed, with a little bit of extra Darklines help, killed an entire unit of 5 Thunderwolf Cav, and then charged into his null deployed Incursors, wiped them out of combat, engaged their 4-up invul. I LFR'd them on the next turn, and basically I had this 9-person, 2 wound each T4 thing that had a 4-up invul, and he took and I also killed a Redemptor on the first turn because I was able to get angles with all my Trueborn. And frankly, the 2 Redemptors popped a couple Raiders. Who cares? The rest of his turn was dealing with those bikes, which put his close combat near the middle of the table. The entire rest of my army charged him and tabled him swiftly on the next turn. The Space Wolves just didn't have the durability or positioning that they needed. I was able to get that ball of 4-up invul far enough away that everything couldn't charge into it, so he had to move up and make risky charges to try to get to them. Like, it just, and then the Redemptors died quick because of no invul. If you're taking Redemptors, you have to have some way to give them an invul, even if it's hide on the first turn and cast a Psychic Power. The Redemptor AP4 is too common. Like Blasters, Heat Lances, Dark Lances, my whole list is AP4. And then you might also run into all those Chicken Walkers that are AP3. Like, it just matters. So, we both took Priority Targets, so that tells you what mission it was. I took Engage and Scramblers. He took Oath and Domination. In the end, I won 86-30, which gave me a 20-0. I would say that I had a lot of fun. Like, he was a really great guy who really loves 40k. And I also think that he was very competent. It was just a bad matchup for him that he wasn't ready for. He had not played a lot into Drukhari, which right now, if you're playing a lower tier book, it's really important that you're practiced. Like Seth, you're playing Orcs right now, which is a lot like having a hand tied behind your back, right? That, like, their book is so old right now. It's extra important for you to have practiced into Admech and Drukhari and all this before you go to a tournament. And you do. You practice extensively into those things, right?
Yeah. I'm on TTS pretty frequently trying to get games, and it's about learning your target priority. It's about learning what are the things that I can't kill, what are the things I can kill, and what do I have to deal with first, you know? And
right.
And Drukhari, I mean, you probably know this better than anyone right now, Colin, but I guess the same thing with Admech right now, Mitch, but it's deceptive sometimes what's going to be the most killing thing in that list. You look at it and go, that Drazar is really scary, and you're like, yeah, Drazar is great, but like, here's a pile of witches. They're also going to murder you, and you're like, oh, yeah, crap, forgot about that. Or you're like, you know, Mitch is going to be over there with like, here's 20 Vanguard, and everyone's like, oh yeah, I got some bolters, I'll kill those, no big deal. And then they're like, but what if you don't kill them, and then they erase everything off the board, and you're like, huh, yeah, they could do that, I guess, you know. And sometimes you hear about those combos when you, like, you know, listen to something like this, and it just doesn't stick until someone does it to you, and then you're like, oh yeah, remember that.
Does it to you.
Yeah, you have to be touched in the bad place by the
there's a
Admech
difference
to really
between
appreciate it.
Yeah.
knowing and understanding.
Yes.
All right, Chuck, why don't you talk about your round 1 game?
Yeah, so my game was against Mitchell. Similar, Mitchell, really strong core understanding of what it is to be a wargamer. He was very good tactically, and he brought Custodes. He brought, what was it, 4 of the small dreadnoughts, 2 of them with shields and 2 with spears, and then he had 2 of the Palace Grav tanks, which are the smaller tanks, and then some of the guys who jumped around with the heavy bolters, and then some of the guys who were just going to stand an objective with their shields. This is the kind of Custodes that I can handle. He moved dreadnoughts out onto each flank, and he moved the Palace Gravs out onto a flank. I deployed the multi-meltas and removed basically all of those threats with an opening salvo. And then I launched my close combat units into him from there, going forward to make sure that he couldn't stay on his objectives, and he scored low in primary. That didn't work. Going second, he was able to pull the 15 on the last turn and catch back up on the primary. but it did keep him off of his secondaries. He was trying to do banners, he was trying to do priorities, trying to do domination, and I made that cost him every turn, and he just ran out of army, which gave me lots of space to do all my stuff. I think it was really interesting to kind of accentuate what we're talking about. They were obviously experienced wargamers who didn't like. There was a couple of things that I won this game on, which was like he didn't know that he couldn't go through a wall. He couldn't get around a wall because it was a ruin. They'd been playing like you could go through them or around on top of different pieces of it. And there's things like that. And then like he would move not enough stuff onto an objective to hold it until next turn. Just little bits of things that I think through the course of this tournament, he probably improved drastically. And I think next time we play, it's going to be a really tough game. So I'm excited to see.
You only won by 4, Chuck.
Yeah. So I'm saying like it was little things that made the difference.
Yeah. Okay. And then Mitch, your first game with Admech.
Sure. So I have my notes right here for that game. Let's see here, they're in reverse. I got to go to the back. Nope, they're just out of order in general. There we go. I played against Zach's Death Guard. He had Mortarion, several units of Terminators, some Plague Bearers, and one of the Nurgle tanks, or the Death Guard tanks, I should say. And that was, I mean, like a lot. Like I think he had like a total of like 16 Terminators or something like that. So really heavy into that ultra durability. I managed to go first. I had deployed my infiltrators. One of them were able to hide in this very cool like rocket thruster wreckage that had openings on both sides. They could, but it's probably about 6 inches tall, 6 inches wide. I mean, it's circle, so that makes sense. So they were hidden in there, and I actually left them in there for kind of a secondary like turn 2 charge. I YOLO'd my other squad of infiltrators into a squad of Terminators. But first I killed Mortarion with all of my shooting and had shooting left over to spare. It was ridiculous. I put the Vanguard with AP1 plus and plus 6 inch range from the Manipulus into Morty with the I wound you on 4s to hit strat. And did like 43 wounds to Mortarion. And that was before I rolled for the rest of them. I think it ended up being 47 total. And so that got him down pretty far. And then the laser chickens, I believe, finished him off. And I was still able to kill like a squad of Terminators and a squad of Plague Bearers, I think. So he was in a real rough spot from the get-go, and that kind of decided the game from there. You'll notice that if Admech goes first, which I did 3 times, every game the first day, and I did not the second day. If Admech goes first, it's not even a game, usually. They can kill so much, unless you can absolutely hide every part of your army and screen out infiltrators and stuff. It's probably very hard to survive an Admech Alpha Strike. So that was, for secondaries, I took priority targets, or priority, engage on all fronts and raise the banners. I got 44 points on those. I missed 1 on engage, I believe. And then I got a 45 for the primary because I just had board control. I had all the bodies. And so that was with the paint score would be a 99.
Yep. So absolute obliteration from Mitch. I believe this is a great time.
And he was a real good sport about it. He took it real well.
Excellent. I think that this is a good time for us to remind you that Morty's not very good right now. No. I think that if you're listening, I think if you're listening and you're thinking,
nerf, right?
Yeah, this is post nerf. He can't be warp time anymore. But like, Seal of Oath in the Ultramarines list eliminates him. And also Admech eliminates him. And I also play him shortly, and we'll also talk about that. So I think that Morty is nowhere near durable enough for his points right now and how killing this game is. Sorry, Morty fans. I know that you want to play with him, but he's not unkillable.
Admech just wipes out any large non-vehicle with a glance with Vanguard. Unfortunately, it's not a fun thing.
But the Stomp is a vehicle, Seth.
Yes. and then the laser chickens shoot at it, and then it didn't matter anyway.
Okay.
Precisely.
So in our first game, Mitch and I got 20s, and Chuck got a 10 and 10, gave us 50 to 10, and a win. What were you going to say, Seth?
I think it's interesting, Mitch's point about if AdMech go first, they can just shoot anything off the table, because I think right now there's a lot of debate on what terrain should be, and I think if you understand that there are armies that if they can see you, they can kill you, the only defense you have is either putting things in reserve or having terrain to hide behind. And some armies don't have good mechanics for putting things in reserve. So I think that informs a lot of what you're talking about with good terrain is you have to have the ability to hide significant portions of your army.
I would also
so you
say
can avoid
that,
the alpha strike.
Putting things in reserve is not really an option for most things, just because of the board change size, like the size is changing the board. Sorry, screening out, like for a lot of these armies, like they can, if you're like, okay, I don't want to deal with this, I'm gonna just deep strike stuff. They'll just screen you out to the point where either you're not gonna get to bring it on where you want to, or you may not even get to bring it on at all.
Right.
You're always going to bring it on, Mitch.
Yeah.
Remember, they changed the rules. It can come into your deployment zone. I can
Well, no,
combat with you. But
Well, no, I'm not.
Right.
Well, with
I thought that was a
reserve
movie
mechanic.
reference, like Mitch is going to bring it on again, part 2.
But the other part of it is if I'm close enough that you do that, that's the only place you can come on. I can just intercept you at that point with the stratagem and kill you when you come on.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's what I'm like. If I can control it enough that I know where you have to come on, I can have a unit nearby to just be like, boop, oh look, they're dead now.
yeah, well, you don't reserve as much of your army as you can. You reserve enough so you can hide. It's actually, this is the first time that I sat down with my army and the models, and I went through and I said, how small can I make my army?
Mm-hmm.
Right? I can load all of these things into rhinos. My all the ladies with jump packs can go into reserve, and I was like, how do I hide? And it did a lot of good for me in this event. I went against some people who could shoot, and they were just like, there's no targets. And then I move out and I'm like, pop smoke on rhinos. Here's your targets.
The point I think I'm trying to get at is without good terrain, it doesn't really matter. For reserves don't work either, I guess. Because
yeah, well,
if
if there's no good
then
terrain,
yeah,
then play. It's a gunline coin flip game.
Yep.
Everyone is playing. Right.
So,
it's sad.
Yeah, let's get a little bit back on track. I would say that this tournament was the best terrain I've played on in 9th edition.
Absolutely. It was
So we're actually going to use Jason's way that he plays terrain for Charity Hammer and for the Prep GT. And the reason we're going to do that is because we all feel strongly that it's the way 9th edition should be. And so we're going to get a bunch of the best players in the game to play on it and give you their feedback. We're going to try to invoke change in a positive and helpful manner rather than a bitching manner. That's going to be our attempt.
That will never work. This community is built on bitching.
We are going to try to show you guys why 40K needs to have a certain amount of terrain. We're going to try to demonstrate that over hundreds of hours of content.
Are you saying that you'll be the light to guide the lost tendrils of the 40K community back to the grace of the Emperor's light?
No,
You're the golden thread.
I don't think I would ever say anything like that. I'm literally wearing a Castro Eldar shirt right now.
I'm pretty sure he would have said Emperor's bosom, but otherwise, yes.
Back to the Emperor's.
Does he have a bosom? Like, he's a withered corpse.
You're a withered
The
corpse.
Emperor's sternum?
Okay.
Sternum. There we go. Bony
I
sternum.
don't know. My army is space pirates. They don't care about any of that. So Stephanie says, so are they evil? Can I hobby them evil? I said, well, I mean, they're space pirates. She's like, sure, but like Johnny Depp, space pirate, like they're just kind of kooky and meanwhile.
No, they're super evil.
I'm like, no. I think evil space pirates is an acceptable title for them.
They make buildings out of people. Like
they're slavers.
You can do whatever you want.
Yeah. So our next matchup, and so the way this worked is there were 10 teams. And we were in a pod with another 4 teams. So 5 teams were in each pod. And then we played our pod the first day. And then the winners of the pods matched up for the next day. So our second matchup, we played against Marty's AdMech and Chad Space Wolves and Jason Bird's Chaos. And we'll each tell you what those lists were like. This is the first time where we did really thorough pairing strategy. The Jason list is a huge skew. It's 120 Plague Bearers and Morty. And we weren't sure. We had a lot of conversation about how each of our lists would deal with that. And then we also had the AdMech list, right? Where I hadn't played a lot against AdMech. Wasn't sure about AdMech. So when we went through our pairings, we said, okay, Colin might be a coin flip. Colin might be a coin flip with the AdMech. I'm not now. I've played it now and I get it. But at the time we weren't sure. So I said Colin might be a coin flip with the AdMech, but Colin will stomp the Plague Bearers or the Space Wolves. Chuck has a good game into that AdMech list, but we're not sure exactly. We thought Chuck had a coin flip with the Plague Bearers because of 120 of them, and Morty was just going to be a problem for the sisters. And then Chuck would do well into the Space Wolves. We thought that Mitch in an AdMech Bear was a coin flip, but would do great into the Plague Bearers or the CSM. So what we said is Chuck has 2 less than
Space
stellar
Wolves.
matchups.
There was a confusion that on CSM and
There was.
Space Wolves during pairings. But yes, go on.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, that's right. They told us it was CSM, and we saw a CSM list, and then when we got there, it was Space Wolves, but everything was pretty much the same. Mitch wasn't
company. Yeah.
So basically what we determined is that Chuck had 2 not stellar pairings, but I had 2 great ones, and Mitch had 2 great ones. And so what we did is we said, okay, well, if we let Chuck pick, I think this is the one where we led with you, Chuck. If we let Chuck pick, Chuck can get a winnable matchup. And so what ended up happening is Chuck picked the Space Wolves, and that basically put the Plague Bear. Oh, that's right. Chuck picked the Space Wolves, and then they picked purposefully to put me with the Plague Bearers, and put Mitch with the AdMech Mirror. Which is not actually what we wanted, but it's also what happened. So Mitch had the AdMech Mirror, I had the Plague Bearers. I am not going to talk about my game against the Plague Bearers really much at all. Morty died on the first turn through to a third of my shooting. I rolled pretty good. The Heat Lances rolled incredible. Morty did not roll well. Morty died. I spent the next 2 turns killing 120 Plague Bears. And in the end, I won 90-19. So I don't think there's a lot to talk about here. Jason's a great guy. He understands the game really well. He's playing a skew list that says, can you deal with this? And the Drakari are like, well, yeah. I've got Witches. I've got the Court of the Archon. Like, I can shoot your Morty away, and I can shoot Plague Bearers, and then everything in my army kills Plague Bearers well. The Succubus kills them well. Draz kills them well. The Incubi kill them well. Witches kill them well. The Court kill them well. The Bikes kill them. Like, everything is good into Plague Bearers, and so he just got quickly tabled, and it wasn't much of a game. We then had lots of time to talk about 40k and wander around and say hi to everybody. So that's it for me for round 2. I took Banners, Engage, and Thin. We basically played 1.5 turns of the game, so I mean, I would have maxed all of them. Okay. Who's next? Chuck, you want to go next?
Yeah, so I went against the Space Wolves. Chad brought a Space Wolf. He's bringing, I think the cornerstone of it is he's got 3 Redemptor Dreads. He's got some Blade Guard, some Wolf Guard with jump packs, Lightning Claws, and Storm Shields. 2 squads of those. Couple of Cyber Wolves here and there, some Outriders, 2 squads of Eliminators and a Lane Speeder. And then his characters, 3 squads of Intercessors as well. And he's got Logan Grimnar in the Chariot, a Librarian, and a Chaplain. And essentially he was trying to cast the... I don't know the Space Wolf stuff enough very well. Basically cast the powers so that he could get the cover saves, and then move out inside the cover save bubble from his Librarian, and make a charge from there.
When he casts that power, he can spend a couple CP to make everyone -1 as well. So
yeah, that's what it was. Yeah. We were playing Dawn of War, so we were spread out, and he put most of it on one side where he had a place to hide, and then a little bit of stuff over on the other side, including the Armor of Russ. I completely forgot about the Armor of Russ, so right out the gate, I YOLO'd my Zeraphim directly into all that stuff on that side, because without the Armor of Russ, they'd pick up everything on that one side, and he'd be on one objective from that point forward. Surprise, there was an Armor of Russ there, so they just died. From there, I utilized throwing my army away, creating move blocking scenarios, and shooting my Melta into his shooting. So I took the Dreads down, and then he didn't have anything to effectively shoot at the Retributors from there. So I just kept putting things in front for him to charge into and kill, and then shooting his army with Retributors, and he was gone very quickly. The game was very quick. I think if I had not thrown my Zephyr away, it would have been far more devastating. His mix of combat didn't play well into mine, and his mix of shooting didn't play well into mine, so the match was just really skewed towards me. I ended up pulling it out 80 to 39. So it was pretty good.
Yeah. And then Mitch had the AdMech mirror, which he was worried about.
Well, so I was worried about it. So I played Marty, and I was worried about it because it's just a who goes first sort of thing to a degree. The terrain on the table. I actually played on one of the tables we're getting for Charity Hammer, the crystal table, and I was worried just because he had two Onagers. He had the chickens and stuff. He can pull my bombers right out of the sky. So if he goes first, that's really bad for me. If I go first, so he had 2 squads of 3 chicken walkers, the 2 Onagers. He had 3 different squads of the Electro Priest, 2 close combat, 1 shooty. He was all Lucius. He had a couple Manipulus, the Skitari guy, 1 squad of Vanguard, and 2 squads of Rangers, and then like one other smaller squad, I believe, but 2 max squads of Rangers. So the big worry is in the mirror. Onagers are great at killing flyers because they have +1 to hit against them. And obviously laser chickens, 6 laser chickens, it has no problem picking up those flyers for the most part. But as it turned out, I went first. I had the thing that won me this game, like really decisively, was my AdMech had infiltrators, his AdMech did not. And if you do not have infiltrators and you're playing AdMech, I do not know what you're trying to do. They are, in my opinion, like the MVP best unit in the Codex. They create forward pressure. Of the majority of the armies you're dealing with right now either are low model count, high toughness with a good armor save, or they're high model count, low toughness with probably not that great of an armor save. So they go into either fine with strength 6, AP 1 damage, exploding. You can buff that up. I think at one point I got like 60 hits. With a couple stratagems, because you give them +1 attack. You can give them, and then you make their taser goads explode on a 5 or a 6 to hit. And that gets you 2 extra hits per each one of those. So that's incredibly spiky. And so I basically move forward with my infiltrators on 2 different flanks. They have 50 shots at strength 3, which almost everything he has is strength or toughness 3. So I'm actually wounding on 4s. I can Wrath of Mars from them. And I can actually pump them up to strength 8 as Mars, because you get the canonical for +1 strength, and there's a stratagem for +1 strength for them. So you can be strength 8 with exploding on 5s and 6s attacks, and then they get really scary. So I really like them. Basically, once I got into him, I touched his chickens. I flew the bombers over both of his squads of chickens as well, and that's really bad because you get the full 10 dice against a squad of chickens with more than 1 in them, because you get 6 dice per vehicle or monster in the squad. So I just deleted 2 chickens right off the bat and flew my bombers off the table, so he couldn't really shoot at anything other than what I had exposed. But basically, I killed somewhere between 800 and 1,000 points of his army in turn 1. And then he had put some stuff in deep strike because he couldn't hide everything, and so he could barely respond on his turn 1. And turn 2, I just moved up and made it so he only had 2 very small places to have his deep strikes come in turn 2. If I hadn't forgotten to move 1 unit, I could have completely blocked him off of the board, other than his table edge. And if he had done that, I would have intercepted with infiltrators to kill off half of those T3 Electro Priest squads. So it was very decisive. However, if he had gone first, he's going to pop my planes. If he can kill my infiltrators, then he's sitting really good. But he'll have to expose himself to do all that. And Wrath of Mars is a really, really big deal in the AdMech matchup, especially against Lucius. because of those mortals you can inflict. But the other half of that people don't think about with the Lucius matchup versus Admech is that that transhuman trick is really cool, but Vanguard wound you on 4s to hit, so they don't really care. Mm-hmm. And you're like, cool, you're +1 save against it. Make 50 of those saves. I'm gonna kill some dudes. Like it's still gonna happen. I
really like the impact that you're having with the infiltrators there, because we were talking about earlier about hiding.
Yep.
And removing things. So if you have that strong presence in the beginning, it means that, like you said, you had priests off the table. Those priests probably would have been very helpful with handling the infiltrators, but then you run out of space. So you have this strong shooting behind this pressure to be on the table.
Exactly.
It creates a much harder situation for your opponent.
Absolutely. Admech immediately apply pressure if they're built correctly, and they're just on you, and you have to deal with what they're dealing with. And the infiltrators are frustrating because you get no rerolls against them, period, if you're fighting them in combat. They have a 5-up info, so they're not that hard. I mean, they're not so flimsy, and they are and they're able to still get a lot of benefits for durability and the combat output. If you just have, like, you're like, oh, I'm gonna spend 2 CP on them. Oh, look, now they can kill a knight. Like it can get pretty intense pretty fast. But that match, one thing I want to say about Marty, I was really, really impressed with his rules knowledge. Like, he was quoting stuff like verbatim. Like, when I'd be like, well, how are we doing this training? He's like, well, the rules say this. And it was like exactly what the rule book said. Like, all these different things. He was really, really sharp on his game. And he had a really demoralizing first turn. And I think this was his first time getting to play Admech out of the gate. And to lose half your army turn 1 and hold no objectives, just have no way, like to have the game be like just done, was really disheartening for him. But he bounced back, and we had a good time talking about it and like what could be done differently and some different stuff. So points wise, let me go over secondaries real quick. I took engage, raise, and eradication. Eradication of the flesh is the new Admech one, and basically I get 3 points each round if I kill more infantry than you kill my vehicles. So against infantry heavy lists, it's a really good one. And so I ended up with a 97 on that one, and he had a 27.
26.
Oh, 26, sorry.
Jason doesn't do paint scores, so the numbers that Mitch is giving you don't match the app at all if you look at it.
No, yeah. So without the paint scores, it's 87, 16. But
it also doesn't matter for this tournament because it's all 20-0 anyways. And everybody gets to 10 and doesn't do anything. So we were 58-2 on that matchup. Now I will give a shout out to that team. That was the team that was assembled on the Friday before the tournament to make sure we had 10 teams because a team dropped.
Yeah.
So
kept the number of people even, so nobody had to sit out.
That was a really so they were actually doing the Lord's work there. They weren't just
doing the Emperor's work.
Yep. No, that's not who the Lord is. He's a dick, and everybody knows that.
Well, who's the Lord of the Drukhari?
Me, I think. I don't know. I'm the one that decides who lives and dies on a table by table basis. So I mean, I'm saying. And the answer is a lot of them die. So now we're into in rounds 3, 4, and 5, we play the 3 best teams there. Now, because it's a 10-person tournament, the pairing's got a little wiggy, and so the TOs actually, because it's only 10 teams but 5 rounds, the TOs actually came to us and worked with us to get all the best teams into the best teams, to make sure everybody played each other, which was neat.
Good matchups.
Which was neat, yeah. To make it more interesting. So in the 3rd round, we played one of the 3 teams we prepared for, which is the Evergreen Dice Pirates. And Dave Robson is on that team with Necrons. Dave is for those that have been listening to the show a long time, I got super surprised by a Necron list at the end of a large GT while I was playing Eldar, and he almost beat me in 8th edition. That's Dave Robson. Dave Robson has been at our stream tournaments. He's a fantastic general who knows Necrons incredibly well. Matthew Bombard is his lifelong best friend, and Matthew plays Sisters. He's also a good player. And then Tyler Bortel, who's been on the show and you guys know is a brilliant young general doing his best with Tyranids, rounds out that team. We were worried about these
his
parents.
Most important accolade for Tyler
Is that he's
he
the
is
triangle?
the triangular menace.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Yep.
yes.
He is the reason why we had triangles all over Facebook 40K for days.
He's Arch Pythagoras.
Of the hive mind.
Yep.
So, for pairings here, we said that if I play so the Necron list is the arcing lot. It's a bunch of super durable vehicles that shoot you. We thought that there was a chance that list could get me. We thought that I would probably win, but it'd be a low scoring win. We thought that Chuck would probably lose to that list because he had no. So this is a rough one because the current sisters Chuck was playing, Chuck had played those sisters into all three of these matchups previously. He knew what all three of these games might be like, right? No, that's not this team. That's the next team. That's not this one.
I'd played Dave Robson and lost to him a few times.
I was thinking of I was thinking of round 5, Chuck. Let me just take back what I said. You had not played Bombard Sisters, and you had won all your games against Tyler to this point.
Yeah.
Okay.
At this point.
So for the Necron matchup, we thought I probably win, but close. We weren't sure what happens with Mitch because it's just so much shooting and it's so durable, and we thought Chuck loses. So the Necrons were the one we were the most worried about. And then the Sisters, we thought I would get it because I'm very practiced into Sisters. We thought that Mitch would wreck it, and we thought that Chuck would have a close game because it's a Sisters mirror. Then for the Nids, I was completely confident that I would handle whatever Nids BS was thrown at me. I play Tyranids. I help Tyler with his list. Tyler helps me with my list. Like, we both, I think Tyler and I both knew what would happen in that matchup. We thought Chuck would get a good game there, but it might not be a blowout, and we thought Mitch would blow that list out. So what we said is, we predicted, I have it here written on a piece of paper, we thought they would lead with Tyler. That was our prediction. We thought they would lead with Tyler because Tyler doesn't want the AdMech, was our reasoning. So we thought if they lead with Tyler, then if we lead with with Chuck, and they lead with Tyler, that means that Chuck can pick the Sisters mirror, and now everything's fine, right? Like, maybe he wins, maybe he loses, it's close either way, but Mitch and I were pretty confident in the other two pairings. So we talked through, with this one, we actually talked through, what if they put this person first and we put this person first, and tried to predict what people would take, and tried to map out how it would work. Because it's a 3v3 and not a 5v5, you're really just looking for two dominant matchups, and then you're fine. What we got was Colin into Sisters, which is what they wanted. They got what they wanted there. We got Mitch into Necrons, and we got Chuck into Nids. That's actually what we would have picked had we had the option. Had they just come up and say, these are the games we're thinking, we would have said, yeah, that sounds fine to us. So both teams, what they wanted paired the same. Is interesting. Which means one team was wrong and one team was right, I guess, with the pairings. I'll do my game first. This is one of the games I'm going to talk about in detail. There's a lot to learn here. Bombard is a good opponent, and his name's Matthew Bombard. Bombard is a lot more fun to say than Matthew is, so I just call him Bombard. And also, when I walk around the tournament and I see him, I yell, Bombard! At him as I go by him, and he seems to enjoy that. So, I hope he enjoys it, because I'm not intending to stop. So, we played on a Hammer and Anvil mission with 4 objectives. That's important. He had Sisters. This is old Sisters, though, so I'm not going to go into incredible detail on it. Two units of Arcos, a unit of Death Cold Assassins. He's Bloody Rose. He had Kyria. I don't know. Every time he said her name, I thought he was, or his name, I thought he was saying gonorrhea, like every single time.
Her and Dracus was good enough.
Yeah. And then he had Becky, and then another Canoness and a Missionary. Then he had 4 units of Sisters with a Heavy Bolter. He had 3 units of Repentia, 8, 8, and 5. An 8 unit of 8 Zephyrim, a unit of 7 Zephyrim. A Heroine in the Making, a Magifier with Litanies of Faith. It's a lot of words. A unit of 5 Seraphim with Flamers, a unit of, with Melta, excuse me. A unit of 10 Seraphim, unit of 9 Seraphim with Flamers. 2 units of Retributors with Melta and Rhinos. So we get to the table, and there's a huge building in the middle of the table, and then there's a bunch of terrain basically blocking both of our deployment zones. And I realize that as long as I'm careful, he's going to have to get about 10 inches off my deployment zone in order to get angles into my deployment zone to see my army. And I realize that I have an objective, and then there's two that are in the wide open neutral zone with a giant building between them, and then he has the same thing where he's got buildings blocking his deployment zone. And I am someone who goes ham. I am known for playing aggressively. I have lost many a game because I went too aggressive. And I looked at this and I said, and Bombard said when he came up to the table, I'm really just going to try to play you close. And I thought, oh, well, I'll just try to play you close then. Like I was so confident that I could get this matchup that if I just play carefully. And so what I did is I said, well, wait a minute. What if I take Herd the Prey? It's Hammer and Anvil. There's two objectives that are open. And then there's my deployment zone. If he comes to my deployment zone, he gets shredded. If he puts anything on either of those, I send witches in, I shoot, I drop the Shredder Scourges, whatever. I clear them off. I make sure he's not on those objectives at the end of my turn, every turn. And then I go take them with something that he has to push off. Worst case scenario, neither of us ever get more than 5 on primary, but the whole time I'm maxing Herd the Prey. And then what if I take Thin? Because if he wants to engage with me at all, I'm going to get Thin points, because he had 9 points worth of sisters to kill. And then what if I scramble? What if I scramble and I can scramble both of my quarters, and then I drop the Scourges into his quarter and scramble, and now I've got a 9 there. So I can get a 9, maybe I get an 8, that's 17. Yeah, we just had a weird internet spike, sorry everybody. And then Herd the Prey for another 15, while I just stop him from winning primary. That's my plan. And he picked Domination, which played right into my hands. And by the way, I'm going to think more about this, but I think Domination might be terrible in most close games. I've won because of my opponent picking Domination a lot recently. He took Scrambles, and he took Assassinate. He took Assassinate because the Drukhari characters are fragile and beat sticks. What he was not counting on is I just wouldn't send them. Just wouldn't. Who needs them? They could sit in my deployment zone and screen the whole game. Don't care.
Well, this is an example of misreading what your opponent needs to do to beat you, right?
Yeah.
So if he read it correctly and he's like, you have to bring those into me to win this game, it's going to be a scrap fest, Assassinate's great. But if he's like, well, wait, if he just sits in his deployment zone and makes me come to him to some degree because he can hose me off these objectives, I have no real play into his characters because he's castling, right? So
yeah, you're completely right, Mitch. And basically what I realized is, and then he deep struck a lot. He deep struck the Hand Flamers, both of the units of Zephyrin, maybe only one unit of Zephyrin, and he just deep struck a bunch of stuff. And the Melta sisters were in Rhinos in his deployment zone, and I just said to myself, I'm just going to stay here in my little castle until all the deep strike is on the table. That's just what I'm going to do. He got first turn, which is perfect. It's exactly what I wanted. And he kind of just positioned himself. Maybe I got first turn, actually, now that I think about it. It doesn't matter. Basically, what happened is on my first turn, I emptied a Rhino behind a wall in my deployment, or a Raider, emptied a Raider behind my deployment zone behind some terrain, and flew the Raider out and parked it on an objective, and said, there it is. And then I took a unit of I think 5 witches and advanced them out onto the other objective. I said, there we go. I have both objectives. You have to expose something in your army to shoot them off, and whatever you expose, I get to shoot back at. And then I took the rest of my army and spread it out so he had nowhere to deep strike. So if he wants to bring in a Hand Flamer unit to clear either of those objectives, fine, but that Hand Flamer unit's now sitting in the open. If he wants to expose his Melta, fine, but now we're sitting in the open. And what happened on his turn is he did expose a Melta unit. He managed to get a pretty aggressive angle on a Melta sister unit where I just couldn't. I must have gone first, now that I'm thinking this through. So he had this pretty aggressive Melta unit that I couldn't shoot back at that killed the Raider. Fine. Okay. He wasn't able to get the 5 sisters off the other objective without exposing a bunch of his army. Also fine. So his response was, I killed that Raider, and then now it's my turn again. And I say, okay, here's another empty raider on an objective, and also here's my Hellions, my Reavers. I took the Reavers, I flew them up, I got them in the way. I had them kill some stuff. I had them get their four up invul engaged, and again, he's screened. There's nowhere to come in. And the best part of this was he had the middle of the map. So I've screened, I don't know, 70% of the board. Because I dropped the Scourges with the Shredders in that middle building. They shoot the Melta Sisters and kill them that I can't see. And now I have 5 dudes with a full 2 inches between each of them in the middle of right in front of his deployment zone. And it is now his turn 3. His entire army has to come in, and he has literally nowhere to put any of it except his deployment zone, which plays completely into my game plan. On his turn, he tries to bring down a flamer unit to flame off the Scourges, so that he can then bring in another unit closer and get a 9-inch charge on me. Doesn't work. I do the cover stratagem on the Scourges, and they just tank the flamer shots down to 2 of them. And I say, okay, well, the 2 that are not in coherency of each other, who's left? So basically, that won the game. Everything in his army had to deep strike into his deployment zone on turn 3. That leaves him 2 turns to push the board. Not enough. I also, in the end, he had to push up. Because of that, his turn 4 had to be super aggressive, and I countered that really hard and ended up nearly tabling him. Because he had to. Because I put him in a situation where his only option was to come for me. I got a 45 on primary, he got a 25. I got a 32 on secondary, he got an 11. I did not let him kill 1 character, I let him scramble 3 times. And he got domination 1 time. So, this is a situation where you win it, you go into a matchup and you think, Drukhari is going to come and try to table me. But the reality is that Herd the Prey is so strong that there's lots of games where the Drukhari don't have to leave their half of the table. They can just say, I'm going to make sure you're not in my 2 quarters. I'm going to make sure you're not on these objectives. I'm going to throw some things at you to distract you, and that's the game. It's very strong, and it's a wonderful way to play Drukhari. It also was very out of my comfort zone, and I worked really hard at it and was very proud when the game was done. And at the end, Bombard said, I feel like your strategy was unwinnable for me from the first moment we started. And I think that's a really harsh thing for someone to say after a game, but I don't think he meant it as that. I think he just meant it as, wow, good job. And it felt really good. So that was a game I wanted to talk to you guys about, because sometimes you can just think about the mission and think about what you actually have to do and just do the thing you have to do. So that's my one of my favorite games of the weekend. Who's up?
Well, speaking of sisters not being aggressive enough.
Okay.
So I played into Tyler. Let's go over his list, because I feel like he's always got some crazy Tyranid stuff going on. He brought a Flying Hive Tyrant. This guy was made out with all this stuff, right? He's got the extra cast and the plus to cast and shooting out mortal wounds, and he's got a bunch of Devour attacks. 2 squads of 3 Tyranid warriors, built for punching. 2 barbed hair duels. And then in his Chronos, he had a Neurothrope, 10 Termagants, and then the 30 Termagants with Devourers, 6 Hive Guard, and a Lictor. And then to add on to that, he added some Gene Stealer Cult. He had a Magnus. I think it was a 6-man hybrid squad with Flamers, Hand Flamers, and then 2 7-mans with Hand Flamers, and then the Kelemorph with 6 pistols, because that's what you do. Our game was actually very similar to what Colin just described, which I think is very interesting. Those barbed hair duels, we've played twice before, and he knows that if he gets them within 36 inches, I'm going to send a squad of Retributors out, I'm going to spend the strat, and I'm going to just blow them away. So he went first, and I just hid. So his first turn was a lot of just looking for positioning. He found an angle where he could shoot his barbed hair duel in and kill a rhino. Mm-hmm. But that also allowed me to move a unit of Retributors out mid-table and trade for the barbed hair duel. So traded a rhino for a hair duel. Great benefit for me because he was doing to the last, or while we stand, we fight. So that's 5 points in my bucket. I move out. but I'm tentative. I move out on one flank so that I'm on 2 objectives, and I basically say, here's a rhino. If you want to kill the rhino, you can, but you have to bring your other barbed Heraduel out, or you're going to have to try to kill the hive guard, which is likely, but not necessarily. Particularly if he spends the 2 CP, he'd probably take it out. But it's to my favor. He goes and he's like, okay, I'm going to drop right in the center of the table with my Lictor and 30 Devourgants. He shoots and kills the Retributors who killed his barbed Heraduel. His other barbed Heraduel finds a spot and shoots into the rhino and clears it off. And then he makes an 11-inch charge into my deployment zone and takes my home objective as well. So I start turn 2 with 0 points on the primary. And I'm completely wrapped into my deployment zone by Termagants.
Rude.
So I spend my turn clearing that off. It's not hard. I just send some Repentia in, and they tear it up. Of course, charging with a rhino or something first, so that they didn't get Overwatch to death. But it was hard for me because I couldn't get back onto the table, so I lost. I was trying to engage. I wasn't able to put down. I wasn't able to retrieve any ocular data. Right, like I was just stuck doing this one thing and then trying to build a screen because there's going to be hand flamer bombs coming in the next turn, right? And that loss of momentum sort of continued to play through. And Tyler plays with a lot of junk, and he just kept sending it to steal objectives from me. So my primary is 0 on 2, 5 on 3, 5 on 4, and then 15 on turn 5 because I'm going second. And I was able to pull that out, but like only getting 25 points of primary is a pretty harsh scenario. Mm-hmm. He also did a very good job of screening, but then also double screening. Like he put down a unit of the hand flamers and then put the Kellermorph behind them so that I couldn't come in and shoot the hand flamers off with my hand flamers and then drop the Seraphim in and take out his hive guard. So he kept that space held back for me so he could continue to pound me with that through the course of the game. I think it was turn 3 I finally got shots on them and killed 3 of them with multi-multis, but it was too late in the game for that to have actually mattered. I was trying to get the while we stand point, but it's just that's not enough firepower to actually kill those guys off unless things go extremely well. But as we kept going, he basically ran out of army that wasn't in that back corner protecting the hive guard, but I was also out of position on the board, right? I was behind on engage, I'm behind on primaries. I only ever got 3 of the ocular data things. And then I did really well with no prisoners and got 9 points out of him. But in the end, he was able to get his primary up to 30, and he was able to keep his stranglehold going. And he kept 2 of his while we stand targets. So he got the game 60 to 52. And that's right there in the details. If I had finished picking up the hive guard or chose to shoot the barbed Heraduel instead and gotten 4 points off of it, and if he hadn't made that charge into my deployment zone, I'd gotten 5 points there. Like it was usually when I see close scores, sometimes the game isn't actually close. This case, it was an extremely close game, but he got the things that he needed to, and he caught me out. Like if I just put objective secured on my home deployment, he only got like 2 Termagants on there. It would have been mine, right? It was just a mistake in like not putting some people on the table who should have been standing on the table instead of sitting in a rhino.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's still though just a 10 to 10.
Yeah.
I mean, I love how much screening is back in the game. I really enjoy that personally.
Yeah, it really is.
One of my favorite things about Repentia is you often shoot the Repentia out and kill a thing, and then with their consolidation move, they spread out into as long a line as they can to create a move block, but also a no landing zone. So it's not just what they kill, but they also like create this space that is mine.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and that's
period of time, and I love it.
Yep.
Oh, Tyler's correcting me that since he won by 8, it was an 11-9. That's important to Tyler.
Oh, is it? All right.
That's
what did you say? 10-10?
Yeah, I did. We will document officially that the 13 points your team got, that 11 of them were you, Tyler.
Great job, Tyler. Good job. Chuck, I would just like to throw a little irony at you. I believe the tactic that you described that Tyler was using was what you used against the Space Wolves. Throw crap in their way and then blast them.
Oh, absolutely.
So, He must have
And
walked by your table and saw your strategy and was like,
he's
yes,
like, oh,
yes.
good idea.
This is what I will do.
So Tyler and I have played 2 times before this, and our games were very similar. He brings a lot of crap that's OBSEC to take your points back from you. I know this. I'm playing extremely low OBSEC, but I also didn't prioritize getting my OBSECs on my objectives. So this is my fault. I should have absolutely been doing that. There's chances he would have killed them, right? He's smart. He would have gone after him with the Hive Guard, but that means something else would have lived.
So how much self-flagellation and candles were involved with this loss?
Well, that was the last game of the night, so I had all the way until the morning.
So at least 27 candles.
Yeah. No,
Except for the 3 hours it took us to get dinner. You didn't have that time.
That's self-flagellation. It's different.
Yeah. God, we were so hungry.
It's always the worst.
Yeah, it was. We ended up eating at like 11 o'clock at night because we went to this bar and they just said, they're like, yeah, we have a little bit of a wait. That little bit of a wait was really long. Anyways, Mitch, your game 3.
Sure, Dave Robson. So David Robson and I have played, I think this is our 3rd or 4th time now. I'm always in an event. And he's always played Necrons. And he is playing what is affectionately known as the arcing lot. So as many of those OBSEC vehicles with lots of shots and fly that you can have, and then a couple characters and a couple of those little barrel-chested gribbly dudes, and a squad of destroyers with I think that's everything more or less. There's it's Doomsday Arcs, Tesseract or Arcs. And I don't remember what the command barges. There we go. All that good stuff. So this game I was a little concerned about just because I'm like, okay, well, I just didn't know how it was going to play out with Admech. He has so many shots that, the wrong table, the wrong first turn kind of thing, he can definitely kill off a lot of things very quickly. And he can get up in my face and really move block me into my deployment zone too, which is a problem. Mm-hmm. So like my combat's fine like in this list, but it's not enough to deal with if he had brought like 3 or 4 vehicles right up on my front line to block me from shooting at anything else. But it turns out that if he had done that, I would have just killed those 4 vehicles because it was not a problem. So we were the table we were playing on was the crystal table again, I believe. And I already knew I was going to have a great game with Dave. He had brought some Maker's Mark with him, and it was the last game of the day, and we were just chilling, having a good time. We had just played like a month ago in the RTT at Colin's house, and I had played my Inquisition guard list into him. So we get going, we get everything set up. He makes a few mistakes on deployment. There are some really long angles on the outside edges of the table for this hammer and anvil. And he sets up 2 of his Doomsday Arcs basically slightly canted out when they needed to be canted in. And so I put laser chickens on each side of my deployment. So there's something really important about Mars for the laser chickens specifically. The canonical where you can reroll one hit, 1 wound, and 1 damage roll is massively important for those chickens because their shots are so few. You're Mars already, so you get 1 reroll to hit anyway. So you're rerolling 2 hits, 1 wound roll, and 1 damage roll, and that can be the difference in finishing something or getting that last 1 wound through when you need to. Because
Mitch, can I ask a Admech question as I'm learning here? That's also in addition to the Skitarii +1 ballistic skill thing, so you can be hitting on 2s with 2 sets of rerolls to hits, a reroll to wound, and a reroll to damage.
Yep.
On 2 different units because you have 2 units of 3.
Well, and it's on my planes, it's on my tank, it's on everything, right? So that's a really useful thing to have, and it also makes Mars MSU really interesting. We'll talk later about the idea of 12 5-man ranger squads with a sniper rifle in each, because that gets really funny. So I was able to, I popped that and I put my chickens out, and then I put the +1 save on them, so they're pretty durable still. And I was able to pick up I moved my infiltrators up as well because there's a central ruin that he had clustered a lot of vehicles behind, and he had scarabs also in there, really hidden. But I was able to get angles with both infiltrator squads to pour 100 shots into those scarabs, and just remove them. Without issue. And then I was able to charge. So I do all of my shooting and my bombing. I bomb his character vehicle with both bombers, and so now the bombers are in his backfield. I actually forget to shoot the bombers entirely. There's so much shooting going on in AdMech. It is literally there's probably a turn in every single game I forgot to shoot something. Because
and it really shows. Speaking by the terrible scores you got, it really shows that you forgot to shoot everything.
I left 1 or 2 potential points out there. Okay, like there's always room for improvement. But
I can hear Seth's buggy list crying in the background.
It is.
Like,
I'm keeping a track of what you just killed turn 1. You said scarabs. Did you get both the Doomsday Arcs?
I got 1 Doomsday Arc down to like 1 wound.
Okay.
I got the other Doomsday Arc. I actually shot at the wrong unit. I shot at a Tesseract Arc. I thought that was the Doomsday Arc. It was my confusion, but it was a tournament, so I stuck with it. Because I had moved on to other shooting. So I took out a Tesseract Arc. I took out 2 units of Scarabs, and I killed one of his other Tesseract Arcs on the charge.
And did that character that you dropped all the bombs on survive?
Yeah, he had like 1 wound left.
Okay, so you have like a vehicle on 1 wound and a character.
2 vehicles
like
on 1
7.
wound. Yeah.
It's like 7.
Yeah,
Jesus.
and I wasn't able to shoot a lot of my stuff.
Well, but this is Necrons, which are
remember,
like you only wound us on 4s on our vehicles because invulns and.
But remember that arc is going to go to 2 wounds on its turn, so I mean that's
It's all fine. And so I also know that my Vanguard are effectively useless in this game because he has nothing. They're all vehicles. So my Vanguard
are being the scarabs too quick.
Well, my Vanguards are being used to just hold objectives out in the open, and they're like 20-man units, and it's like, cool, pour shots into them. I'm gonna make one of them auto pass, and I'll take the casualties on the other. Okay, it's not a big deal.
AdMech table the Necrons. What else can we learn from this?
So what I can learn from this is this is a real turning point in the tournament for me. Not in score or in anything else, but Dave says, "Oh right, I have a stratagem that can make my vehicles blow up automatically," and he's using it to try to kill one of my bombers. And I go, "Oh wait, I have one of those stratagems too. I have not been using that."
Damn it, Dave.
Why did you do this to us, Dave?
He tries to kill one of my bombers with the explosion. I'm like, well, if you do that, I'm gonna make my bomber explode. So it's like a mutually assured. But anyway, so that game, he did everything he could to try and counterplay back, but I had so much pressure on him by that point. I own the table. Like if he moves forward, I get to shoot all of my stuff, which is not good. And he tried very hard to kill the Doomsday or the bombers, and he killed. He did not succeed with killing either of them, I believe. The bombers did not die day 1.
So, I played a bunch of Eldar vehicle parking lot stuff, and one of the frustrations. And I've also played guard parking lot quite a bit. One of the frustrations when you play vehicle heavy is that if you get hit too hard on the first turn, it's just over. There's no amount of jank or play that you can do because your army does the one thing, which is durable vehicles that shoot your opponent. And if you lose too much of it, you don't have the power you need to dig out. It's actually a failing of a skewed list like that. Now, that list is good. He beats lots of people with it. That's not a bad list. But it is a list that's bad if he misplays or plays something too brutal. I found hiding on Bird's terrain relatively easy, but his stuff is bigger. Mitch, do you think he could have hid better than he did?
He could have hid better, absolutely. He could have protected his Doomsday Arcs a bit better. I don't know that it makes that much of a difference. It's sort of like...
Well, okay, but my specific question before you say that, he needed his stuff to survive longer and get more value before it died. And I'm just wondering if he could have done that or it just was not possible.
It would have made he could have done that better, but it would have made the game closer. But the problem is, the problem wasn't like if you kill my bombers, that would have definitely reduced my output. But the problem was really the infiltrators getting in to all of his vehicles right off the bat, because now you have to deal with them. You get no rerolls, and you have to actually put firepower into them. Which, if you're putting firepower into them, he's not killing anything that's on objectives, and he's just, it's this cycle of just a downward spiral. Because to catch up with me on the primary, you have to expose stuff, which I just eliminate, and he doesn't have enough stuff to throw.
Right, that Necron list doesn't play the mission well. It wins because of how much damage it does to its opponent while not losing anything. And if you can, and like, I think that I would have had a, now that I've thought that through, I think it would have been a similar game with Drukhari. I think that I would have had too many things for him to kill me fast enough to stop me from playing the mission.
Well, and the Wrath of Mars is a huge problem for him, because I just go, oh, cool, I wound you on force. Oh, take 6 mortals, plus all your saves.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
So we win that round. We end the first day 3-0. We win that round 47-13.
13
I
points
guess
of
for
which
secondaries, real quick. Accreation of knowledge, engage, and grind them down. And he took bring it down, purge, and thin the ranks. And the final score was 94-33.
Okay. On to day 2. The morning of day 2, we played basically we're playing the 3 best teams now. This is the second one, and it was our teammate Justin playing Drukhari. It was our longtime good friend Oates playing Iron Hands version of the Ultramarines that's super durable and shoots the heck out of you, and Steve Trimble playing Custodes. Now, the list of people that have won a GT in the Pacific Northwest over in 8th edition and 9th edition is a small list, and he's one of them. There's like Zach, Peter, Chuck, myself, Mitch, and Steve, right? Like that's the list. I'm probably forgetting someone, and if I'm forgetting you, I'm deeply sorry. But like GTs here are won by a small collection of people, and Steve is one of them. And I was super excited for the opportunity to play him, which does end up happening. But first, let's talk about pairings for that game. So we said, oh no, I just had it. Where did it go? Oh yeah. So DE, Custodes, Dreads. I was relatively confident that I could win any of the games. I thought that the previous time I played Custodes with Ultramarines, I was super unimpressed with them. I didn't know that they're at all hard for Drukhari. I thought that would be a relatively straightforward game for me. I thought that the DE mirror, I didn't really want the DE mirror, just because Justin had a lot more practice with Drukhari than me. Like lots more practice with Drukhari than me, but at the same time, I'm a more experienced player than Justin, so I felt like I could at least play him close. And I wasn't at all scared of the Dread list, because it isn't the Ultramarines version. And the reason I brought the Heat, a big part of why I brought the Heat Lance bikes was to give me more ability to kill the Dreads. So that's where I was at. Was this the one that you didn't like any of the pairings, Chuck? Yeah, that's this one, right? Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm having some pretty bad internet, but yes, this is the one where I had lost to all of these people.
Tanner and Jeremiah have both won GTs in 9th in Washington State, is what Tyler's saying, so I apologize. I knew about Jeremiah and had forgotten, and I didn't know Tanner had won a tournament. So the list got longer while we were hunkered down in the pandemic, and I didn't know that Tanner had won one. I apologize, Tanner. I know you're a great player. I wasn't implying that you're not. Okay. So this is the one where Chuck had played all 3 of these people playing these exact lists, and we know that it's bad for all of them. And then we felt like Mitch would do well in all 3. However, we were concerned that Mitch's first experience with Drukhari, which he hasn't seen or played against at all, would be against someone super practiced in Justin, and so we wanted to avoid that. So because we wanted to avoid that, and we knew that Chuck was going to be in trouble no matter what, we led with Mitch and let Mitch pick away from the Drukhari. Mitch picked the Dreads.
Oats. Yep.
Oats. And then it ended up that Chuck got the DE and I got the Custodes. This is the other game I want to talk about because Steve is as good as I was hoping he was. He's very good, and he played the Custodes great. So we were on Hammer and Anvil with 6 objectives. There was a giant stone arch in the middle of the table that is very important. It allowed a passageway through that was about the size of 3 Telemons. Ask me how I know. There were walls pretty extensive walls blocking both of our deployment zones and our 6th objective in both cases. And then the 4 objectives in the middle of the table had some line of sight blocking between them, but mostly could see each other. So it's basically hide in your deployment zone or come into the death box. Is basically what the table was. And Trimble's list was Trajan, and then that super tanky captain dude on foot, who I just think is great. He's got the 2-up, 3-up, and then he's got a 5-up feel no pain, and he's got 9 wounds. That guy's a stud. And then he had 5 custodian guards with sentinel blades and storm shields, a unit of 3 custodians, another unit of 3 custodians, the big unit of dudes who shoot like crazy and fly around with their shields. I love those guys. And then 3 Telemons. So I took Herd the Prey, minimize losses, and Scramblers. My plan here is to play the same game I played into the Sisters. Right? I'm going to stay on my side of the table. I'm going to counterpunch anything that comes over here, and I'm going to do well in secondaries. He took Grind Them Down, presuming that I have a lot more stuff than him. Minimize losses at Teleport Homer. Teleport Homer was actually playing right into my hands, because that means he needs to deep strike stuff into my deployment zone, and I'm not intending to really leave my deployment zone, so I'm not going to really let that happen. Steve goes first. Can't really see my army at all. He moves the 3 Telemons up so that they're shoulder to shoulder in that big archway. What that means is that next turn they're going to move forward and charge into my army if I don't stop them. I don't like that at all. My first turn, I take the Reaver jet bikes, who got +2 movement that game, and I fly them and land them directly in front of the Telemons, 4 inches away from them so they don't get heroically intervened, and completely move block them. There you are, Telemons. You are stuck here. We're also going to shoot you. I emptied a number of my raiders. Emptying raiders on the first turn is a new thing I did in this tournament that I loved. If you see that your opponent's coming towards you, get your dudes out of your raiders and set them up for next turn. Don't let them take arbitrary deaths and be out of position when the raiders blow up. So I emptied some raiders and moved them up, one of them to take an objective, and then I also did a further move blocking of him getting in case he got past the bikes. And then the Court of the Archon, who can advance and charge on the first turn, went YOLOing up the table and charged into his shield guys who were holding one of the far away of the middle objectives. That was just completely silly for me. If I had just run them the other direction and charged into the normal Muscordia, the normal custodian guys, that's fine. Fighting the Storm Shield guys was really bad. It did not go well. They even went with they even had the Djinn Blade dude with them, and it still took forever to deal with that. So basically, I then shoot a lot, and I get one of the Telemons down to 1 wound, and don't really hurt any of the other Telemons. He takes 1 Telemon, backs it up, charges it into the court. That was bad. If the court had waited till turn 3 to go out and then a 5-up, 5-up, it probably would have been fine. It was bad. He also charged them with the shield guys. It was just not great. He charged the bikes with the other Telemons after shooting raiders off the table, and he just pushed forward at me, dropped down his shield captain dude, or his on-foot captain dude to do teleport homers near me, and it's my turn, and I now have 1 million custodes in my face. This is the turn where I won the game. It was not at all clear at the time because I was taking losses so quickly, but this is the turn. Because what I did is, I took 1 Telemon and basically move blocked it with witches. I took another Telemon and killed it, and then the final Telemon, I killed that as well. So I took him down to 1 Telemon, and the way I did that is, I sent Draz and all of the Incubi into a Telemon together with the Fight Last Archon. I said, you Telemon are fighting last, and all of these Incubi and Draz are here to get this job done. Meanwhile, the Succubus leapt over a building, as a Succubus does, and killed Trajan, that was standing next to the Telemon. So I killed Trajan, I killed that Telemon, I shot the other Telemon off the table, and then I move blocked the 3rd Telemon. And what that did is it slowed him down so much that I was able to build the momentum that I needed. Unfortunately, the bolter dudes came in and just obliterated so much of my army. And I ended up in a situation where everything in my deployment zone had to run out at him. But because the Telemons died and Trajan died, the Succubus also killed that 2-up, 3-up, 5-up guy. Because I was able to kill enough of his killing, when all my extra stuff came out of my deployment zone, the witches that were left and the characters, and the Djinn Blade guy never died. He just kept fighting those shield guys every turn, in and out of combat, fall back and charge for a CP. He just kept fighting them and they couldn't kill him. He got down to 2 wounds, but they just couldn't get him. I did the mixture where low AP stuff I took on my normal armor save rather than risking my invul. That's a big thing with the Archon. Like, until you're at 1 wound, you don't really need to roll on the 2-up invul. Because when that 2-up invul fails, the Archon dies anyways. So you might as well be rolling that 2-up invul with 1 wound left rather than 6, is how I feel about it. Provided you have a save otherwise, which you don't sometimes. Because he has a 4-up save. He had a 5-up save in the previous edition, so it makes a big difference. So this game ended up being me just hurting him enough early to slow him down enough to catch him. And going into turn 4, I was down by a gazillion points. But on turn 4, I tabled everything but the dude standing on his objective and scored a ton of herd and kept enough alive for minimized losses to get a 10 there. And I got 3/4 worth of scramblers. If you look at the primary, we both got 40, but I got a 23 on secondary, and he got an 8, and that was the game. And that 8 on secondary that he got was, he only got 2 grind him downs. Grind them down is bad. I really think it is. I've never seen it be good in a game with me taking it or anyone else taking it. I think the problem with it is even in a game where somebody has a lot of stuff, it's like how people thought Killmore always works against the Tau Triptide thing with all the drones. But the reality is the Tau player usually loses all the drones on 2 turns. Mm-hmm. And so you're only getting that on 2 turns. Oh, no, it's not Killmore. It was Death of a Thousand Cuts, right? That was why that mattered. Minimize losses was bad because I got him down to 1 unit. And Teleport Homer was really bad because I screened my deployment zone the whole time, and so he did never get to do it. He only got 2 points from it. So this is another situation where I picked better secondaries and played the early game correctly, but Drukhari do this thing where they take heavy losses early, and it's hard for my brain. They just take so much losses early because they're so fragile, but they just have too much stuff, and the stuff that they have is too powerful. So when you're doing a lot of wounds and a lot of damage to Drukhari early, make sure you're being careful. Make sure you're also protecting your stuff, and you're also positioning yourself for the late game, because what happened, if you want to watch a game yesterday against Chuck on stream, it sure looks like the sisters are just killing me early in that game. Several people watching Chuck gave that feedback. It looked like you were just handling the Drukhari. But the reality was I had too much stuff that was too good. And when you kind of lost, 30% of your momentum, my momentum was still there, and that was the counter. Yeah. So that's what Drukhari do, so you got to watch out for it. But what a wonderful opponent Steve is. And I think he's on our team now, right? We brought him onto our team. So, wonderful to have him in the meta. Really enjoyed playing him. Just great. So, okay.
All right.
That was me.
Let's talk about my game with the Drukhari.
Yeah. How'd that go, Chuck?
It went great.
Did it?
The game before, I was way too passive, and I let my opponent on the table, and I recognized that. And then also in the practice games that we've had, I've been passive with the sisters. I've given space to the Drukhari because I didn't want to get charged by all of them. I did not do that in this game. We deployed across the tables from each other. I deployed my rhinos in hiding, but not so much in hiding that if he wanted to move his raiders forward, he couldn't shoot a couple of them. And he went first. He popped those raiders up onto a building, and he popped one rhino. That was the end of his shooting that killed the rhino because he used some miracle dice. And so the Repention side got out, and they used that forward momentum to get upfield. What that did is it put 2 raiders out where I could see them, and my multi-month retributors have no job in the game other than to trade for raiders. So they went forward, spent the CP so that one of them was within 18 inches, and I was getting plus for damage on it, split the fire, and blew up the 2 raiders. This put his Trueborn on their feet, on the ground. He was able to position them so I couldn't see them, so I couldn't follow up on that. But then my Repentia could go into the sister squad that the other sister squad that came out and pick up another kill. So I very quickly pushed into his area, grabbed some points. I wasn't able to get all the way over the line, so I couldn't get my engage point with that move, but I felt pretty decent about that as an opening. The rest of my rhinos also just put their foot on the gas and drove up into the midfield. So now if he wants to come at me, he has to hope that he'll kill the rhino with the, I think it was 3 or 4 dark lances he has left, or he has to risk that his close combat unit is going to charge and kill my rhino, and then my close combat unit is going to drop out of it and countercharge him. He chose not to take that risk and instead move block me with empty raiders and tried to pick things up. I used my characters to kill the empty raiders in charging, and then did my best to take the long way around to keep moving forward. Another round of...
Oh, I think we've lost Chuck.
We've lost Chuck.
Yep.
The real space raid came back to finish the job.
Well, we're also running pretty long on time, so
Yep.
we'll let Chuck get
Chuck,
back
are
to
you
his
back?
game if there's Oh, is Chuck back now?
Am I back?
You are.
All right. So I continued to push. I pushed as hard and as far as I could, and that meant that he had to come up to the line to meet me. What this did is it allowed space for me to drop my Seraphim behind him. So then my Seraphim were taking pot shots at his cheap objective holders, like 5 racks, and killing them off so that he wasn't on his home objectives anymore. And then the way the stratagem used to be worded is you did it when you landed. So you could do it, you land, you shoot, and then at the end of the phase, into the movement phase, you go, oh, by the way, these guys are doing doing scrambles. So I was getting a lot of value there. And because I was coming at him from so many different angles, he wasn't necessarily able to address those because they were farther out. But they do move 12, so they get to come back into the battle and unleash their flamers. Seraphim hand flamers are amazing versus Drukhari.
Mm-hmm.
Really noteworthy going into the new book. They're strength 4 instead of strength 3.
Oh my god, it was so
they've gotten
bad.
even better. And when they're not good against your targets, they're so good at doing mission stuff. So I really they're one of my favorites. And they showed off in this game. They killed tons of stuff. He had 2 Courts of the Archon that were kind of hidden in his backspace, and I just kept making it not a good idea to bring them out until he finally had to make one real push at me. And he came in with Drazar and his Incubi and a Court of the Archon, and he killed everything he came in contact with. But I had my unit of 5 sisters with 2 flamers in them held back, and I had a unit of Seraphim held back. Plus everything in Sisters Army has a bolt gun. So everything stepped forward. They unopened fire on all of that. They got Draz down to 1 wound. They got an Incubi down to 1. And they did some decent damage to the Court of the Archon. I sent a unit of Repentia in. He passed the leadership test to make me fight last. And I spent his CP to make it so that every time a Repentia dies on a 4-up, I do a mortal wound. He's only got 2 wounds in that combat, so I wiped them anyway. He managed to kill 5 Battle Sisters and all the Repentia with all that, with Draz, but it was fine. And at that point, he was basically just a unit and a half of the Court of the Archon and Fight Last Archon in his backfield, and I just created enough threat to keep him there while I held the rest of the table. But all of that really only gave me a 71 to 53 point victory, which is quite a few points, but it's not crushing. That really comes down to what I was talking about earlier with my list is not built to create these big gulfs of points. It's more fine surgery, and I don't think fine surgery is great for team events. It's better to really hammer your opponent out and get those points. But this, I think, is the first victory the Sisters have had against Sisters of Battle where we're playing pretty seriously, and it went very, very well. Obviously, not having the crazy flamers on the racks helps a ton. It puts Sisters back in the game quite a bit because those things pick up units too effectively, and then they stand there and be like, "Sure, you want to charge me? Because I'll overwatch anything you have to death."
Yeah, the liquefier racks into Sisters was where I stopped. The games against Chuck with those is actually where I lost my excitement for Drukhari. We talked about it
nothing
like
you could do wrong.
Yeah, it was like even the grotesques with the liquefiers are like, oh, we picked up the Triumph. Okay, like
cool. Well, what are we gonna do with the rest of our turn?
Right, exactly. So, Mitch, I want you to talk about your game, and I think this is probably your closest game. So you should talk about it in detail. But we are running long, so we'll need to be brief after this.
Sure.
If we can be brief here, that's great. But I expect this is your game you have the most to say about.
This is the game I do have the most to say about. So I was playing Osius, friend of the podcast. We've all played him. We all love him. He's a great dude. I've played him, I think, 2 or 3 other times. And so it's always great when you're going into a game and you know your opponent. You already have a good rapport with them. So we knew we were going to have a good time, and it was a lot of it was my hardest game, I would say, but it was also the game that was the most relaxed. Other than Dave, because obviously we had whiskey, but he was running Iron Hands. He had the Redemptors and the Volkite Dreads, and
I have his list here.
Yeah,
Mitch.
go for it.
He's got Chapter Master, Primaris Librarian, Primaris Tech Marine, very similar to the Ultra Beams list, and then he's got 2 units of Infiltrators, a unit of 10 Intercessors. And then he has 3 Redemptors with the Plasma. He has 3 Contemptors and 2 Landspeeder Storms. That's his entire list. The previous tournament, he also had a unit of Vanguard Vets. Looks like he dropped them. Go ahead.
Yeah. So we're playing Hammer and Anvil, and it's a very it's a table that he's going to be able to hide. I'm going to be able to hide. So I deploy my Infiltrators hidden in kind of a ruin right off of his deployment zone. I put both squads in there, and I'm like, okay, one squad he'll be able to probably kill, but that he'll have to focus that one down. And if he wants to kill both squads, he's gonna have to move more dreads into these firing lanes that I can get my chickens into. So it'll be more of a trade for me. He ended up going first. He put almost all of his shooting into the planes. So the bombers, because he knew that the bombers could be really bad for his characters, and because he has the character Dreadnought, and I can just be flying over that being like 6d6, or 6d6 twice every time. So that can really make some problems for him. So he shoots at the one with -1 damage first, and he eventually is able to kill it. And then he puts the rest of his shooting into the other one, and he gets that one down to like 2 wounds, I think, 3 wounds. But he is not able to kill it, and I had both of them set up so that I could repair them if need be. But instead, what I realize is and then the other part of it is he moves a Redemptor forward to shoot into my Infiltrators and charge the Redemptor charges a squad of Infiltrators, but I had it set up so you couldn't charge both of them. So if you charge one, the other one's going to be free to do whatever it needs to do. So he charges in there and then realizes, oh, I don't get any of my rerolls because of the Infiltrators. So he kills like 4, I think, total with shooting and combat with a Redemptor. It really wasn't a lot. And then so at that point, it rolls over to my turn. I pop out with my chickens to get some angles on the dreads that he had to move around to be able to see the planes. I also I move up my Rangers and so something I utilized in this one was my the Rangers free 3-inch move. I used them to get up a little bit further and still be out of line of sight. So my Rangers were able to turn 1, get into position to be able to get some shots off. And so I take my bomber, I fly it up to I put it in hover mode, and I just jump up over past one Dreadnought that's in combat with my Infiltrators, drop the bombs on it, and it's now right next to his entire castle. And my plan is to charge it in to get as close to everything as possible, and then auto-explode it when all the Redemptors punch it. At that point, it's just get all of these Dreadnoughts down to as few wounds as possible. So I got like 4 Dreadnoughts down to between 1 and 3 wounds. And then I flew the bomber in, or charged the bomber in, and it exploded and it killed those Dreadnoughts. most of them. And then I also picked up another dreadnought with Wrath of Mars from the pistols on the infiltrators. So that one that was, I maimed another dreadnought with that, but that one survived as well. 2 of his dreadnoughts survived from the explosion of the 6 and the character one. And all the characters got mortal wounds and stuff. And at that point, and then I have my Vanguard pop out and pour like 40 wounds into his infiltrator squad. It doesn't kill it because he's Iron Hands. Iron Hands is great against Admech because everything we do is chipping damage. It's all just one damage stuff. So, and it's all high volume, so that extra 6-up Feel No Pain actually did a lot. It kept a lot of things just alive. And he had moved his Storm Speeders up, so I killed both of those 2, I believe.
Seth is about to tease you.
Yeah.
He's preparing to tease
you. So I see 5 dead and 3 almost dead.
Yeah,
4 if you count the infiltrators.
Of the like 12 things he brought.
Yes.
Yep.
Just so we're clear.
Oh, and then I charged in my infiltrators into another squad of intercessors, and I don't think I quite killed them, but I got them down to 1 man.
Okay, so there we go.
And I touched his other 2 dreadnoughts with them.
We're gonna have to get some feet up here in a second. Out of fingers.
So, yeah, and that was pretty much the game.
No kidding.
We played it out past there, but it didn't go a whole lot further. So, for secondaries, I took Engage, Raise, and Bring It Down. He took Oaths of Moment, Raise, and Engage. And the final score was 94 to 49.
Yep. Okay, so now we're 4-0, and we have won that game 43 to 17, and we are now playing our closest friends at the event, Zach, Harrison, and Hank. They're all on our team. It is the other team built entirely of our team of BIFPOD, or the Legion, excuse me. And Harrison's got the Megara list that John Lennon made, which is Megaras and Warglaves. Zach has Custodes, and Hank is playing almost identical to the Ultra Memes. We want to do the Better Human, Better 40k part of this, and so I think we should be brief here. My game will be very brief because it's Dukari into Knights. So in pairings, we messed pairings up here. We tried to get Chuck into a good matchup when we should have just not worried about it and made sure that Mitch and I were in good matchups. Because this was another situation where Chuck didn't really want the memes. Chuck didn't really want the Custodes. Chuck tables the Knights. We tried to get Chuck into the Knights, and because of that, we ended up with me into the Knights, Chuck into the Custodes, and Mitch into the Ultra Memes, which was fine, except that we knew that the sisters, this particular kind of Custodes list, we knew was a problem for the sisters. And it was a problem to a degree where maybe we just don't even go into detail on it, Chuck. Why don't you explain why it was a problem, and then we'll move on. Why was it so bad?
The biggest thing with Custodes is that their defense is based around minusing strength and then stopping rerolls. Sisters' output is about being strength 8 or strength 4, and then rerolls to make up the difference. So against the dreads, he turns my meltas into wounding on 5s, right? So I can't really bring a Telemon down effectively. And every time I go into one of those scenarios, I have to dedicate, my unit has to come out where it's gonna die next. So I move a unit out, I go to shoot it, he spends some CP, it doesn't perform, and then he retaliates and kills the unit. So my trades are, I'm trading units from my army for CP out of his pile, and a really good Custodes player who understands that, which Zach definitely is. Him and I have talked about how hard this matchup is for me. We've had in-depth discussions about it, and he knows that all he's going to spend his CP on are those defensive strats, and I'm never going to touch him, and I have to sacrifice my units the entire time. We knew it was a horrible matchup. His list is, I think, exemplifies exactly the matchup I don't want out of Custodes for my sisters. I tried to hide and to the last and do all that stuff, and just like, I'm just going to get as many points out of this as I can, and maybe it won't be a full 20. It did not go that way. Zach understood that, and he came 100% into me. And but it was also direct assault or whatever. No, sweep and clear. The one where you can be on the center objective and get points for secondary. So between that and dominate, and he just raised some banners. He got all of his secondaries. He got everything. But the fun story that I will tell is I ran my Imagifier out to grab an engage point. My plan was to shoot my characters out and grab engage points. And, this is a way to, like, whatever. I don't care if they survive. I didn't understand stooping dive didn't require me to charge first, so I got way too close. So he stooping dived with his captain, killed that character, blocked my engage on turn 1, used that speed and momentum to get into my little castle that I was hiding in, and attack some of my retributors and take my home objective from me on turn 2. And then I shot all of the multi-multis at him, and all of the multi-multis were like, no, we don't even want to really hurt him. We're going to shoot in random directions and not do anything. So that guy gets stuck around for a whole nother turn.
God, I hate the multi-melta in your lists. Like, they just occasionally don't do anything.
Yeah, there's whole turns where they just be like, you know what, today we're doing 2s, nothing dies. And then I charged some stuff in. He killed a bunch of stuff with the stuff that charged in, and we just couldn't kill him. He lived until, I think, the last round of the game, or maybe even survived then. No, he didn't. I killed him with a Seraphim on a charge on the last round. For no value other than to make myself feel better about that guy. Okay. So this was a wipeout. Zach got 89 points out of the 90 possible, and I got 30 points, which was essentially I stole some objectives here and there.
Right.
There was a turn where I could have pushed to maybe not get 20 owed in the match, and all of my charges came up short as well because I couldn't generate miracle dice because I can't kill anything in his army.
Right.
It was just it was fun to hang out with Zach. The game was so lopsided that I wasn't actually able to enjoy the game at all.
Yep.
Like I brought my minis, I put them on the table, I will get crushed, and in the back of my head I'm just thinking, Colin and Mitch are going to rock this and we're going to win anyway, and it's fine. I'm just taking sometimes that's the team role, right? You're the guy who takes the thing and gets waxed because of it.
Yeah, and
sometimes you're the Grey Knight, sometimes you're the blood of the sisters on the Grey Knight.
Yeah.
So I had 3 Megaras and whatever it is, 4 Warglaives to fight, and I just played it wrong at the beginning. I tried to hide and be nuanced and like get the knights out in the open and all this stuff, and then he killed more than I wanted him to, and so I just ran my whole army at him and killed all the knights. Right? That it was like early I just was trying to be way too finessey, and the knights were just getting angles on me and just picking stuff up, and I'm like, okay, forget this. Here we go. Entire army charges his entire army, and his army dies. The reality is that the Incubi and Draz killed the big knights well with all my shooting, and the little knights were killed by witches. Because it turns out if you get 41 attacks that wound on 5s and you re-roll and they all have AP, those Warglaives just explode.
Yeah.
So, interesting note I will share about the Warglaives. They were really scary close combat guys in 8th edition, and what is considered scary in close combat has changed so drastically that now when they attack, you just kind of feel bad for them. I just kind of like, oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were going to go... 8 attacks and you have to hit with them? Oh, that's not going to go well for you. So anyways, that was all great. That matchup was a little bit funny because I did get to the table and realize that the Court of the Archon was absolute trash in that game. The Succubus with the Poison Whip was trash in that game. All the Cabalite poison shooting was trash. The Shredders weren't particularly good. Like, there was a lot that was just like, oh, I brought a lot of tools that aren't good for this matchup. But in the end, I tabled the Knights and we were 80 to 38. Mitch. Ultramarines, somewhat quickly, please.
Yep. So I played Hank. Hank and I have not played before, I don't believe. Maybe one time. But anyway, he had the Ultra Memes list. It was a little different than yours. And we were playing on a table. So I only want to hit on a couple things real quick that really matter. At this point, I have realized that bombers are themselves bombs. And I'm playing against another castle list. So I know exactly what my bombers are going to do. Mm-hmm. They're going to move block, and they're going to explode on the castle. But the really cool thing I was able to do in this one, so we're playing table corners, and it's a very ruin-heavy table. And on the long side of my table corner deployment zone, there was a set of ruins that was 2 inches off of my deployment edge. So I set up a unit of 20 rangers in a line right there next to it. And then I set up the rest of my rangers on the outside of the L on in my table corner so I could shoot the middle if he decided to touch the giant wall full of holes that kind of divided the middle. I've got everything's deployed. My infiltrators are also deployed pretty conservatively. I've put one in in each unoccupied table corner, and basically so I can do an action for objectives. I'll just go through secondaries real quick here. Hank took direct assault, oath of moment, and to the last, and I went engage, bring it down, and raise. So I figured he had to go and just try and take the center because otherwise his army can't do anything. I can hide in other ruins that he can't shoot through, and he's a vehicle heavy army. So I just took things where I'm like, cool, the things that you can't see are going to do actions, and they don't have to kill you. I can just win on that. So we rolled to go first. He goes first. So with that, I move my Rangers 3 inches into the ruin outside my deployment zone, and I move my other Rangers back into the ruin in my deployment zone. So he has no targets turn 1 to speak of other than my planes, obviously. So he makes his first turn. He moves. He commits to the middle because that's where his secondaries are. He flies some suppressors out to the side to try and gun down some infiltrators. Doesn't really work that well because I just go full shields up, because I'm going second. Actually, no, I did +1 save and I think +1 strength in combat or something. I don't. Anyway, and my so he pops some dreadnoughts around a ruin to try and get an angle on some infiltrators, and it doesn't work. My turn, I pop out. I put my Rangers out. On one side, I have infiltrators out. On another side, and I have infiltrators out to go towards the suppressors. And then I have my bombers just fly right into his castle, drop bombs, and they're in 2 different spots where I'm like, blow up. You can kill either one. I don't care. So at that point, I don't have a ton of things I can shoot at past I kill both suppressor squads with the infiltrators. So I shoot Wrath of Mars into the back squad and just wipe them and charge into the front squad, and I kill all but one. I think I'm down to like 1 wound, and then I pop my Rangers out. He had brought the Dreadnoughts around to try and shoot at my. He kills a chicken and puts some wounds on my tank. So my Rangers and the infiltrators over there kill 3 Dreadnoughts. He just didn't expect the kind of like firepower coming back that we got. And then his turn, he blows up a bomber. I do like a total of like 8 mortal wounds to 3 dreads. And then he tries to move forward to get some more angles. He pours shots in. He kills my Rangers down to like 5 dudes left, and I'm like, cool, they auto pass, whatever. And my infiltrators keep going in and harassing his lines, and his castle collapses. There wasn't a lot he could do on this board to stop me. This is just too much terrain for a shooting castle like that to be able to operate effectively, and I had too much firepower to fight back.
I think you need close combat if you want to beat AdMech. Well, at least the type of AdMech that Mitch is playing. I think you need units that can charge and beat the infiltrators with their rerolls turned off. I think you need things that can charge into the big bricks. And what I realized, Mitch, as I listened to you talk about these 5 games, is you didn't play anybody who wanted to charge you. Really, at all. In any of these 5 games. So it'll be really interesting after Boise what your takeaway on that is.
Did, but I killed Morty turn 1, so it didn't matter.
Sure, but Death Guard aren't actually even in the same... They're not even an adjacent power tier to what you're playing.
No.
So, especially with Morty in the list, who I really think is just throwing points away at this point in most of your close games. So, good job, Mitch, taking out the Ultra Memes, which of course were super scary, and that did get us the win. We went 5-0 with 235 points. The Legionnaires, which was the people we just played, got second. Cobra Kai, which was Oates and Justin and Steve that we played in the previous round, got third. And Girthquake got fourth, the people we played in the first round. And I do want to point out that the Space Wolf guy, where I was like, hey, yeah, this guy knows his stuff. This is a bad matchup. He wrecked his next 4 games. He just beat everybody after playing me. So good. I'm really glad they came, and I'm glad that they're part of our meta now. This was just a joyous tournament. So much fun. And 2 weeks after Charity Hammer, which is 6, 7, the 21st of August, I think. It's that, if it's not that number, it's adjacent to that number. That weekend, Jason Bird is going to run a 12-team, 5-person team tournament to basically prep for the September Vegas teams. So if you think team tournaments are a thing you'd like to try, they're amazing. You need to come. If you're in the area, contact Jason now. Get your team scheduled. I bet he'll grow beyond 12 if we can get more interest. I do. I bet he will. So we took the win. In the end, it was a super fun tournament. I think we cheated a little bit bringing Chuck, Mitch, and I on the same team, especially bringing the Admech and the Drukhari. But it was a fun tournament nonetheless. So what I'd like to do now is pivot for the last 15 minutes of the show and talk about Better Human, Better 40K, if that's good with everybody. But before we do that, Seth, who has not had any chance to talk, any takeaways from the tournament? Did you learn anything? Did it change your worldview on anything?
I did, because I'm actually doing a 3-person team tournament in a week, just kind of for funsies with myself and Shelby and my friend Connor. And we were thinking in terms of probably more of a 5-person team event, where we were thinking our defender was someone that was jumping on a grenades potentially. But it sounds like the philosophy you guys came up with that seemed to work well is put your weakest person forward to try to avoid the matchups they don't want to take.
Yeah, it's interesting.
So that's it's like an opposite philosophy almost.
I was that person several times. I go forward, and if they give me a game I can win, I'll take that one.
Yeah.
But if they don't, you take the one that's worse for everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. So you're either going to try to win a game, or you're going to be like, you know what? I'll jump on the grenade.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
In that case, you still want to have a highly performing list.
Yeah. No,
right?
but I am this is the first time I've ever tried to be a captain for a team event, so this was all very interesting to me from the team pairings thought process. So yeah, that was enjoyable. Also, I'm also now really glad that one of the people on my team for September is Mitch.
Hey.
He brings those 20s.
Yes, he does.
Yeah, you guys have a great team. You've got Zach and Peter, not the Falcon, but our Peter.
Yes.
And you and Mitch and John Quinnell, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's going to be great fun.
Good.
Yeah, it's going to be a good time.
Yeah, we did a good hybridizing of Frontline, Rogue Trader, and BIFPOD, because our team is also a mixture of those people.
We have the head of the premier hybrid podcast, so it was not shocking.
Yeah. But that's what's funny is we have Danny. So you guys have John and we have Danny. And
we're gonna make them fight each other.
We also have McDougal, who's Art of War, and Tempe, who's High Lords, and Chuck and I. So both of our teams are a mixture of podcast people.
Yes, it'll be quite fun.
It's gonna be great.
I'm looking forward to that trip.
It's gonna be great. Yeah. Okay. So we've started a series of segments called Better Human, Better 40K. And what it is it's be a better person, succeed more in your life, be better at your job, be better as a dad, be better at whatever you're trying to be better at, and also win more at 40K at the same time. And last time we talked about being someone who causes things to happen rather than things happening to you, not blaming games on dice, blaming games on something you can actually improve. I can play this better next time. I think that one of the things that I took away from that is all three of us, Mitch and Chuck and I, all of us talk about the things we could have done better, even in our tablings. And I think I get frustrated with mistakes even in games that I'm winning. And I think that's an important thing. So now it's time for the second topic, which is awareness. So if you read a lot about happiness, a lot of psychiatrists and other things think that one of the key traits to a happy human being, and when they say happy, they mean your general demeanor all the time. How much are you enjoying your life? What percentage of the time are you stressed? It turns out that it doesn't have as much to do with your finances as you think, and it doesn't have much to do with your job. It has a lot to do with how you are going through life when it comes to self-awareness. The belief is, the more that you know yourself, the happier you'll be. And the more that you know, and the more that others know you, the happier you will be. This is something that I didn't believe in, and then I did a many day seminar on this as part of work years ago. And I left with embracing this, and it was a pivotal point for me as a grown-up to being the person I am now. I'm a better dad now than I was before this seminar. I'm a much happier person, and I'm better at 40K. Like, it was everything for me. So how do we learn about ourselves, and how do we learn about others, and how do we help people learn about us, right? So there's a concept that I'd like everybody, if you'd like to Google, I'll explain it, but Googling it will be better, and it's called the Johari window. The Johari window is a 4-box chart, like you're playing the world's most terrible game of tic-tac-toe. 4 boxes, okay? And the upper left box is all of the things that you know about yourself and other people also know about you, okay? So it's like, I play 40K. I know that about myself. Everybody knows that about me. I can get tilted sometimes when I'm losing, and I don't like that about myself. I know that about myself. Everyone knows that about me, okay? Then the box to the right is the things that you know about yourself, but nobody else knows, right? Like one of those is, people like to say, Colin is really a big fan of Colin. What I know is that I'm actually someone who battles with insecurity and things like that, and I've tried to be open about that so other people can learn about that as well. That's an example of a thing that I know about me that you may not know about me. I'm actually quite insecure in a lot of ways, and that's part of where the perceived arrogance comes from sometimes. Then the bottom left-hand box is the things that you don't know about yourself and other people know. An example of that is that recently I asked Tyler Bortel why I'm good at 40K, because people ask me that all the time and I don't have a good answer. And he pointed out some things about how I look for help, and I know what to listen to and what not to listen to, and I know how to incorporate that help and what a good trait that is. I had no idea. And he was right. Then the bottom right-hand box is, you don't know about it, other people don't know about it, but it is absolutely a part of you. And the idea here is to grow to shrink that box that nobody knows anything, and grow all of the other boxes, and grow the box that you want to grow the most is the things people know about me and things I know about myself. So the value of this exercise is that the more that you know about yourself, the more you can be forgiving, the more you can work on things, the more you could improve things, the more you can prepare other people for uncomfortable situations. You can know, oh, I'm going to have a problem with this thing. My friend still wants to do the thing. I should communicate the problem I'm going to have to them so that they will know I'm having a problem, rather than me just being potentially a jerk, right? So in your quest to be known, you have to know yourself, and you also have to help other people know you. And I've tried really hard about that on the show. This is the reason why we did all the episodes on my anxiety issues at the table. This is why we so regularly talked about the fact that I was going on tilt, and I had a game where I got so heated and my stomach got so upset that I couldn't focus. Like, when I started winning at 40K, when I was losing was very hard for me, and we tried to talk openly about it on the show so that other people can benefit. So I think that this idea of learning about yourself and learning about other people is a key trait to being a good human being. And before we talk about it in 40K, I'd like to let the other people here talk about how this sounds to them and what it means to them, and if it relates to anything that they're thinking. And then we'll talk about how it relates to 40K. Anybody have anything?
Yeah, the first thought that occurred to me, talking about the whole, when you use the example of like communicating, hey, I'm gonna have a problem with this, and this other person still wants to do it. That goes back to something I've been, focusing on a lot lately, is ask versus guess culture, right? And so the idea, some people, a lot of people are raised in a culture where you're expected to already know what you're supposed to do, and that makes a lot of sense and works in organized family units. And it works for like sports teams and all kinds of things where the idea is that the communication has already happened before, and so you already know what is expected of you. This is a problem, though, when we start having to interact with other people from other family cultures who may not have those same unspoken rules. And so we can cause ourselves a lot of pain by not realizing that we need to ask for what we need, like you were talking about, versus expecting people to just guess it because that's the culture we grew up in.
I think, Mitch, that's really spot on, and I think that Mitch is a great example of this because Mitch and I care about each other quite a bit. We're very different. We're from very different backgrounds. Our jobs are very different. Some of our hobbies are very different, and we are certainly uncomfortable in different situations. And Mitch and I have done a really good job in our friendship of communicating those things. I'm upset about this. I'm worried about this. I'm thinking about this. And as that's happened, it hasn't made our friendship more awkward. It's made our friendship better. Don't you think, Mitch? Like, the more you and I have talked about the things where we were hearing each other wrong or misunderstanding each other, the more we talked about it, the better. I'm not going to tell the story because it will be weird out of context, but there was a story at the beginning of the pandemic involving the pandemic where Mitch and I had to do a thing and I was really uncomfortable and I just said, hey, I'm uncomfortable because of this thing. And Mitch said, well, that's a stupid thing to be uncomfortable about because I don't care about that at all. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, great then. And we were fine. So yeah, Chuck, what are you and I have talked about this quite a bit off topic, off of the show. What do you think about this?
Well, in general, this is a measure for growth and emotional intelligence, right? This is your way of saying this is where I measure where you are, and then measure if you've seen growth. For me, I've never been successfully able, like you were talking about, actually using this to improve. I've used other ways and then used this to measure the improvement. So it's not the best one for me, but I still get some value out of it as a window into what's going on. I think the thing that sticks out to me with stuff that both of you just said is there's a level of vulnerability and trust that is required in order to see your blind spots, right? To your stuff you don't know about that others might know. You have to put yourself out there and ask for feedback, and that can often lead to rejection or things that you don't want to hear. But that might be the thing that you're actually directly looking for.
It's
a big deal.
Yeah, and what ends up happening is you get feedback from a friend that is very uncomfortable for providing the feedback about your last BIFPOD episode when you made jokes about people being stupid for letting their friends retarget Seal of Oath every turn. We were just trying to be funny. We upset someone. That seemed insensitive and not inclusive. And they're right. And I read the feedback and I got ready to defend myself. And then instead I said, "Yeah, you're right. That isn't the way the humor should be on the show." And Chuck knows that Colin saying that to that feedback is like a last 2 years thing. It's not
That's the moment you decided to be better.
Yeah.
That's the moment you said, you know what? I'd rather improve as a person than have a dopamine rush of being righteous to this person and telling them that they're wrong, right? You chose the long game that was better for everybody instead of the short, quick gain.
Well,
that's something to be proud of. Like that's a highly
something
good person
to be proud of. But I would also say it's also a great it's a great way to honor the friendship you have with someone to listen to their feedback, right? If you choose to call someone a friend but you won't listen to their opinion, you're not really their friend. You view them as sort of an accessory at that point because like what are they there if they can't provide good feedback? Friends help each other.
Well, I do have friends that are only in my life to make me feel better about myself. I do have that group of people. No, I'm kidding.
I'm waving and looking at the
They're
camera.
They're called Patreons.
For the audio.
Yeah, I do have people that pay me each month to tell me how great the podcast is. I do have that. All jokes aside. Seth, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I'll try to keep it brief, but myself personally, over the last few years, I've had to grow a lot through my job. And so when you were talking about the 4 boxes, I think I've put a lot of effort, one, into recognizing my own shortcomings. My job is very stressful. My job is very demanding of me on many days, and I don't react well to that, and that can be some very negative situations. But importantly, it was really important for probably the last year or so in my job, not only starting to recognize how people are perceiving me, not my intentions, but actual perception, but also letting my coworkers know that I did not know this about myself. So trying to shift some of that stuff into the, I know that I am not good at this particular task or particular situation, and my coworkers know I'm not good at that as well. So that helps with their level of forgiveness. So I thought that was really interesting, talking about the boxes. And there's very much, as you talked about, Colin, anxiety involved in that kind of vulnerability. And that's, in hindsight, that's a thing I probably wish I had done, 3 or 4 years ago, was to admit to everyone that I can't do everything. I can't be everywhere all the time. I'm doing too much, and it's causing, the job to suffer. And if you look at that in the hobby standpoint, I've stepped away from some projects. I've stepped away from some groups that I'm with, because I'm like, this is not, I'm not going to handle this well. It's going to cause friction for everyone. And it is best that I just, as much as I want things to keep going, best for me to step away and accept that you can't make everything right and everything perfect.
Yeah, for sure. And that's wonderfully put. I would make one slight point out, because I think we're all focusing on the negative part of this. Not the negative part, but the parts of ourselves that we don't like. This project is just as important to find out what you're good at. The good things are great too, and what that's helped me, especially Chuck, who's one of my closest friends. Chuck has been exceptional at helping me see the things I'm good at when I'm frustrated. That's something that Chuck's an amazing friend to have in these situations, because Chuck's very calm all the time, and will be like, "Well, what about this?" And he'll read. What I'm not. Well, you're always calm with me. You're always calm with me, which is good, because only one of us gets to be crazy anxious energy all the time, and that's my job. So Chuck pointed out things that I'm good at that let me lean into them harder. In 40K, and Tyler observed this as well, it's not the micro play that I beat people with. It's the overall game strategy. It's, I have to kill these things, I have to do this thing. And once Chuck pointed out that that's really what I'm good at, I started focusing on that each game, and it helped. So there's also just understanding, also in this self-awareness quest, I've learned how to run projects. So Charity Hammer's happening, and the planning's going, I would say, an order of magnitude better than it's ever gone before, because instead of me trying to do it all, I found people that are good at the things that I'm not good at, and I asked for help. Because Chuck told me that asking for help is the thing that I'm really great at, and so I leaned into that. And just started asking people for help. You know what I found? Lots of people want Charity Hammer to be successful and are happy to donate their time to make it happen. So there's also just leaning in to what you're good at. Okay, so we're saying learn about yourself so that you know what you're good at, what you're bad at, so you can work on things, so you can lean into things, so you can make good decisions. We're saying let other people know you. Oh, there was one more thing I wanted to say about vulnerability. If you're a parent, read about vulnerability and think about it hard. The pivot for me from crappy dad to good dad came when vulnerability happened. And lots of dads that are veteran dads told me this. I started saying things like, hey, I'm sorry I yelled at you. I lost my temper because you did these 3 things, and they pissed me off, and I have a hard time controlling my temper when things like that happen. That's very different than I yelled at you because you're in trouble. That's a very different thing for that kid to understand, because you said, I'm sorry, I wish I hadn't yelled. I wish I hadn't lost my temper. And I've said things like, the kids wanted to learn how to hit a baseball, and I said, I'm not good at that. Like, your mom's good at that. Let her teach you. I don't know how to do that. And that was really, the kids were not comfortable with that, because they had these gender role thing in their head. So my being open about the things I'm not good at, the fact that I struggle with my weight, and I'm not in the health I want to be in, and I don't spend as much time doing the things I should do, and I don't eat healthy enough. I'm open about all of that with our children.
I like the top.
And it makes
very flary at the bottom. That's the only thing.
Mitch, we can hear you.
If you like that.
Yeah, he turned off his video instead of his mic.
Which is fantastic. So just as you're trying, vulnerability is how people like you. It's a big thing for dating. It's a big thing for parenting. In fact, I just made vulnerability the next topic for this. So let's stop it there, because I think we can spend a whole time talking about vulnerability. So, okay. So taking this to 40K, right? How does this help you with 40K? Well, people will tell you what you have to do to get better, and you aren't going to listen. And the reason I say it that way is because Chuck and I together have tried to help a lot of people with 40K. And statistically, most of the time they're not going to listen. That's.
But when they do, you see it, right?
Oh yeah, immediately.
Yeah.
So be open to that. You aren't the best player at 40K. You aren't. There are other people who are better than you. What can you learn from them? Can you play them? Can you lose to them? Can you ask them all through the game for help? Are you comfortable with that? Can you ask them at the end of the game? Do you ask every opponent what you could have done better even if you win? No, probably not, because it's uncomfortable. But you need to do it. You need to hear... Let me just finish one thought, Chuck, and then I want you to talk. You need to hear the feedback from the other person who perceived the experience in a different way than you. Their brain is different. They see things different. They have different experiences. Everything about that person's different from you. Listen to their feedback. Think it through. Spend time with it. Live with it. Decide what feedback to listen to, and you will win a lot more 40K. Go ahead, Chuck.
I was just say, one of the questions that I often have the conversation, like, what could I have done better? When I am the loser and when I lose the game and I'm looking for a good question, when I remember it, I love it if I ask, what were you afraid I was going to do?
Mm-hmm.
Brings that person back to the beginning of the game when they say, when you imagine the person's going to play their game perfectly and you ask them that, they give you this, like, it's almost a roadmap of how you probably should have played it, or at least some ideas for that. And when I remember to ask it, I love that question. I'm sitting down, I'm like, man, I don't ask that question enough. Like, I should bring it up more. But that kind of, I don't know.
It is a great postmortem joke.
And get there.
Or a question, not joke.
And don't make them yes or no questions. If no one's ever taught you that, yes or no questions aren't how you get people to talk.
That's how you end conversations.
Yeah. It needs to be friendly and open-ended. It needs to be like... And I do it during the game. When I played Steve, Steve's Custodes, he had been playing a bunch of games into Drukhari, and I hadn't played them into Custodes. So I asked him questions like, how do you think this is going? Like, during the game. Like, how do you think it's going? Is this, like, oh, I've charged all these incubi into this Telemon. What do you think happens here? I've never done this before. Do you think it's going to go well? Like nothing that would give me a competitive advantage. Just conversation. Just learning from his experiences as we're playing. Because people want to talk to you.
With that specific question, though, definitely read the player on how they're feeling in the moment, because they might think that they're in a really bad situation, and asking that question might feel a little like salt on the wound.
Yeah, you're right. That's fair. That's completely fair.
Well, they have Telemons, they deserve it.
So, what are things you can do? So, what are things you can do 40K wise to help your awareness? Certainly playing people. I'm going to add one more thing, and then I want you guys to share things that you think people could do here. I think you should net list, at least a little bit. I think you should play a list that you know wins. You should do the research required to understand why that list wins, and you should play it. The awareness of whether you're good at the game or good at list building, it's two completely different traits. We've talked about it a lot. You can be good at one and not the other. As an example, I am not good at making Marine lists. I am good at taking a Marine list that John Lennon has created and tweaking it. That is a completely different skill. I am good at making Eldar lists. I can make Eldar lists from scratch without help. I know that about myself, and I don't spend time trying to make Marine lists. I make lists for the armies that I know how to make, and that only started, Chuck remembers this, I net listed for a long time before I started making my own armies. So just as an example, nothing wrong with knowing the thing that you've built works while you're also trying to learn the game. Who's first? Chuck? Do you have something to tell people about how they can gain awareness of themselves and help others learn about them?
I did, and I totally went blank, and that's why I didn't jump in.
I would say that there... one of the things I would say is it's really important to get feedback, but it's important to get feedback from people that, are interested in that have some investment in you. So like the post-mortem with someone you've never met can be really productive, but playing games with your practice partners and being like, hey, what do you really think I do well at, what style, what X, right? Like, these people see you play a lot, and they know what they feel like you play well, and what they're like, oh yeah, crap, he brought his custodes, he's great with those, or oh, he brought his nids, he has no idea how to use them, he's terrible at horde armies, whatever it is, right? That and listen to that feedback, and if they're like, oh yeah, that play style has never really clicked for you, and it's something you want to improve at, that's fine, but at least now you know that you're coming, you probably need to put in a lot more effort there, for whatever direction you want to go.
That holds really true. This sister's experiment for me is playing something I am not at all comfortable with, right? It is I'm going to branch out into a new skill, not improve what I'm already good at. And that was intentional, but I've done it the other way before, where I was like, oh, I really like the models that Tau have. Suddenly I'm like, how do I do this?
There's little things that happen that you guys can key into. Like, if you've ever been in the situation where someone's like, what if Colin tried Black Templars? Oh, Colin would be amazing at Black Templars. That's a conversation that we had on Thursday in the Discord. And instead of just accepting that and taking the compliment, I reached out to the person that said that and said, what is it about Black Templars that makes you think that I'd be good at them? Right? And they gave the answer, and I said, oh, yeah, that makes sense to me. I will probably be good at Black Templars. And I gave them a try, and they were, by the way, super fun.
Yeah, they're great.
Seth, do you have any...
I do remember...
Oh, go ahead, John.
I remember my answer now.
Okay.
It's actually what we did today. Talking about your games, I remember the difference. Before the podcast, before I joined, I never really reviewed backwards. I always just kept thinking forward to the next thing. I have a tendency towards that still, but the podcast kind of grounds me back to thinking through my games, what worked, what didn't work. And you see my example. I thought about the game I had with Tyler on game 3 of this tournament, and I took what I learned from that and directly applied it to the Drukhari game and flipped what I thought was going to be a loss into a win. Right? Like, that little microcosm is a good sign of it, but in general, if you're going to get better, don't make a judgment about it. Like, just replay it in your head like a movie. Like, what happened? What happened? What reaction to what happened? And just go through that and really mine that for data, and then think, okay, what could have been better? What could have been different? What did I spend too much on? That kind of thing. It
also can be less upsetting for a loss too, right? Like, you also can make yourself feel better. I lost a stream game against Peter's Admech with my Drukhari, and I lost pretty soundly. But when we both went back and looked at it, there was a moment where the Ruststalkers made an 11-inch charge that if they didn't make, I probably am in the game the whole time. Like, it's a dice game. There are moments where the whole thing tilts on its head, and you have to be able to go back and look through and be like, oh, yes, that 11-inch charge was a big deal. Could I have been 2 inches farther away? Right? Like, if I'd been 2 inches farther, no, he won't make the charge next time. That's not useful. That's not anything that I did. I wasn't in charge of that die roll. That's not useful. What is useful is I got those Blood Brides that got killed out of a Raider, and they could have gotten out farther away. Like, I could have taken the extra beat to measure that Ruststalker charge and just been out of range from them, because I'm going to advance and charge at him. I can absolutely make the charge and counter, right? Like,
if you'd been aware of it, right? It's actually the same thing that happened to me with Tyler, right? If I had gotten my OBSEC out and put him on the objective, I probably would have won that game.
Right.
But it's a little thing that I didn't think of because it's an 11-inch charge, but there's no cost to him to do that. So why should I allow him that? It's the same thing, right?
Yep. Seth, any advice?
I think I stole your answer, didn't I?
You did. I kind of wish I jumped ahead of you now, actually, because I was like, I'll just
let you know the host, Seth.
I'm trying to be nice. I'm a guest. No,
we don't do nice here.
I think Chuck, said a point that I was going to make, which is, I play orcs for a while, and then I started trying to actually make competitive content on YouTube, and that made me sit down and go, when I did how do orcs beat Dark Angels? I'm like, well, I've played and I've won, but exactly what were the decisions? What was the target priority? And for me, verbalizing a lot of that stuff, writing that stuff down, makes it so the next time I go to that game, I can recall that information quickly and go, okay, yeah, I remember. These are the things that I need to focus on early. these are the reasons. So if I see a weird list that maybe I'm not used to, I can just say, okay, well, the abstract reason was they don't move fast, so I have to take care of their shooting early. So just target whatever their shooting unit is, that kind of stuff. And I think a lot of people do that, sitting around at the dinner at 11 o'clock at night talking about it, but we're not always in the best frame of mind to remember things then. So that recall several days later, I think, helps. So I think for me, that was a lot of what helped me learn about how, and talking to people and understanding that there are lists that are good that I will not be good with. Like I love Gazgol. I'm sure Gazgol is great. I've seen people play Gazgol lists well. I can't play that list. And I've not like just beat my head against that wall for the last 6 months. I've said, I can't play that well. I'm just going to put him on the shelf and I'm going to play something else. That, accepting your play style, I think, is also an important part of awareness. I don't like having a giant thing that my entire army has to revolve around. And yes, I know I just said that, and I'm playing a Stompa this weekend, so.
But it's a Stompa. I think what you said is actually really important, because what I was talking about is reviewing what happened. You're taking what you reviewed and picked up and turning it into actionable items that you can use again in the future, which is definitely the next part of that. Is your thing, next time I face Dark Angels, I'm going to have these sets of data points to make a plan around. You're sort of pre-planning for games that are coming, and it's going to improve your ability to improvise, which I think is, and then teaching is always better than just understanding, right? Like it locks it in a whole different level. So,
yep.
So this is wonderful, and I hope that you're all listening and you're all thinking about how you can do this better. I would just reemphasize that it's okay to tell your friends that you made a mistake in a game of 40K. I think as I hear all of you guys talk, I think about the fact that people don't want to do that. People came to me at the tournament we were just at and said, "Oh man, I totally would have had him if I hadn't been diced on turn 2." No, that's not why you lost. I'm sorry. Yes, once in a while someone loses because of dice. It's very, very rare. It's much more likely that you were counting on dice rolls that were not probabilistically, is that even a word, going to happen.
Or you put too much weight on expecting a certain result and didn't account for the variance.
Right.
Regardless, you've put it on something that you can't control.
Yep.
So you've eliminated your ability to control or grow or improve the situation. You've set yourself in a category to lose again to the same scenario.
This is something that happened to you, not something you could make happen.
Right.
Going back to the first one.
Exactly right. So, I'm making good progress in my 40s now. And I realized that this tournament, more than any other tournament I've been to, that I am one of the oldest people at a tournament now, rather than just there. And 20s Colin was a massive, pretty big dick, till probably about 24, 25 years old. It took me a long time to figure out how to be a human being. I'm still trying to figure it out all the time. The lessons that I'm bringing for these segments are very personal to me, and they are the things that I wish I could go back and tell 18-year-old Colin. Awareness, vulnerability, listening, learning, being the one that makes things happen, not things happen to you. So I would just say, especially for our younger audience, which there's a lot of, I would say, I know that at 21, it is very easy, or 22 or 23, it's very easy to think you have the world figured out. I promise you that you don't. And I promise you that when you are 41 and talking to 20-something 40K players, hopefully 40K is still here 20 years from now, I hope that you will also remember, oh yeah, I also should pass this on. So thank you guys for listening to that and humoring us as we continue on our journey of talking about being good people and good at 40K at the same time. We'll do that again next time. I think next time I'm going to adjust the agenda and just put vulnerability next, because I think it's that level of important. So we'll talk about vulnerability next time, why it's so important. It's brutal hard for me. I don't know about you guys, so it'll be a...
Oh man, it's my favorite thing.
Okay. Being vulnerable?
Yeah.
Okay.
Once you do it, can't hurt you anymore.
Yep.
It's like becoming invincible slowly but surely.
Damn it. Now everybody knows I'm not perfect. Now what's going to happen? Oh, everybody likes me more than they liked me before.
They like me more, and they'll help me with the things I wasn't good at.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, man, that really hurts.
Right.
With that, we have hit 3 hours.
We have hit 3 hours. So
you get when you bring me on.
That's right. So
yeah, Seth, with all your talking.
I know.
So
try not to run the show.
No, you've done great, Seth. We're going to wrap it up here. If you enjoy us and the topics that we discuss and you want to know more, you should join our Patreon group. Many people have said it is the best $5 a month you can spend in 40K. I have not said that because that would be pompous. But I will quote other people saying it. What's that, Seth?
I'll say it. I'm a Patreon. It's the best. I pay $5 for that, and what is it? Art of War is $5. I think I get much more out of my $5 BIFPOD subscription.
We have a very active Discord. It talks about a lot of things. If you want to talk about things that are ridiculous, that's there for you. If you want to talk about things that are real, that's there for you as well. If you would like to be an adult and be serious the whole time, we've got you covered. If you want to talk 40K, we have that as well. So
and please show your pets and your hobby projects.
Yes, this weekend is baby pet pictures is what's happening right now. Patreon.com/BIFPOD. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us on Twitch. They're both really easy to find. Our news is updated on Facebook. We're going to someday have a website, but that day is not today. So, thank you, everyone. We'll be back 2 weeks from today to record again. We really appreciate all of you. I want a special thank you.
Boise Cup coverage.
That's right. Boise Cup next week. Mitch is going to cover it the following weekend. Seth, thank you so much for coming on and tolerating 3 hours of talking about a tournament with no orcs.
Yeah, it was rough, but I made it.
Yeah, you did make it.
I had to tolerate the whole tolerate the whole tournament without orcs, so all you have to do is tolerate listening here.
Just wait another month, Chuck. Wait another month.
I'm here.
We're just excited that they'll hopefully be here for Charity Hammer.
I think they will be. They're supposed to come out in July. We'll make it happen. All right. Wog to you all. And we will be back in a couple weeks. Thank you, everybody. We love doing this. We're glad to share it with you. Bye now.
Bye.
All right.